All right. Welcome, welcome. This time we should be a lot better off with our streaming settings so we don't have any more connection problems, hopefully. So let me know in the chat if there's anything wrong with it. Otherwise, we'll just get to it. So for today's stream, I'm just going to be using the normal Blender viewport on my mouse and keyboard. We'll probably do a lot more editing than the last one where it was almost all sculpting. And obviously you can still sculpt on the mouse just fine. So we'll probably start with, I think the main two major details we need to add would be the wings. Obviously those will be pretty important. And then we'll clean up the feet. So once we do that, we'll retopo quickly one more time and then combine the mesh. And once this is all one piece, we can start texturing and planning the rig and doing all the fun stuff. So let's get to it. All right. All right, so first things first, let's maybe start looking at how the wings are going to look. I think they'll have to be pretty big to make any sort of sense. So something like that at least, otherwise it just won't look right. I mean, even looking at these bird references, these hawks, their wings are much larger than the rest of their body by a considerable amount. So really this probably would have to have massive wings. So we'll keep that in mind as we go. And then we'll have to see what the meta rig for the wings looks like. And we can adjust the sculpting to kind of match the joint details that has. But we'll get to that later. So for now, I think let's just start adding them in. All right, somebody popped in. Welcome, welcome. We'll go back to sculpting mode here. We'll put on our X mirror and dynamic topology. So we're going to ruin all this relatively clean topo that we made last time, but that's all right. We knew that would happen a couple times. All right, I'm going to grab the snake hook. Let's get the normal one here, not the elastic one. I kind of like that the screen is longer than the drawing tablet because I have a lot more tools visible at one time. So now I think the wings would have to come off of the same set of bones as the shoulder. So let's get pretty high strength. Brana says, woohoo, part 2. Yep, I'm excited you're here. Thanks for coming. Hopefully this time we can get into some of the more fun stuff that really makes it look like something. Hopefully we can get to a lot of the texturing, and that really makes it go from a blob to something special quickly. But all right, I'm gonna take this whole top of the shoulder and just start to pull it out. I think that's gonna probably work fine. Let's maybe make this tool a little bigger and just do it again. And I don't want to get them too far to the middle because we'll just have to move them out. And then when you start these sort of things from a small blob, you want to just make sure that you keep enough volume to it so that you're not going to basically be stretching too much. So let's just pull a big shape out of this. And that's why I wanted the other snake hook. So now usually there would be somewhat of a joint. I think the first limb of this would maybe come out and go forward. And then we'd have a bit of a joint up here. And then something like that. So we're just going to kind of have to play with this. I have not worked with wings as much as I have with other things, so This should be a little bit of fun. All right. So most of the actual structure of this will probably be pretty simple. I think we have to give him a little bit bigger shoulders just because they've got to carry all that extra weight. So we'll just put kind of an extra blob up here just to show that we've got a little more going on. Just inflate the bottom of these here, almost kind of like the antlers, and then we'll clean up the look of them later. We'll just make sure we keep this going the right direction. And then depending on how you want to do it, realistically, you could use just your feathers for most of the actual wing part that you see. So we'll play around with that because there's not enough of a mesh here to attach the wings to, or to the feathers, I guess. So we'll probably try to follow these. So there will be a group of smaller feathers up front, and then you'll have long ones that stick all the way out. So some of these will just be really long wings, but you'll see later we need enough topology to be able to grab somewhere for the feathers to stick out of. And then once we have an idea of what this will look like, we'll be able to model a feather, and then we can start slapping them on there just to see what it looks like. Okay, so we'll kind of get just a little bit of a edge on this thing. I don't think it'll mean too much yet. We'll have to fix it later, but it's just a good starting point for imagining the shapes. Probably pull this back out a little bit, pull it back out this way. I know last time somebody asked about drawing tablets, and if you need any special equipment, you definitely don't. Right now I'm using mouse and keyboard, and I think depending on how much you sculpt, it might even be faster for certain things, like navigating the viewport. If you're already used to Blender, is much easier with mouse and keyboard. So I think really the only main advantage is once you get used to that drawing tablet, it goes much, much faster. But that also takes a lot of time and may or may not be worth it. So, okay, so I'm picturing these are just kind of the front of the wing, and then the feathers are going to be all the way back here. Let's just do a couple crazy snake hooks. So you'll have feathers that are super long like this. That actually works better than I expected. And then you'll have a bunch of the short ones on the front that kind of cover up the ends. So we'll have at least two kinds of feathers. Man, that actually worked way better than I thought it would. We can't leave it like that, but I think this is why you really don't need a lot of structure in the wings. I think the more structure you have, the easier it's going to be to control how the feathers attach. But other than that, making this entire thing just a big flat piece with texture on it would probably not be easier to use. So we've kind of got those shaped in general. And they're a little goofy. We'll have to check on that later. But let's try not to linger too long. I always get caught up on details too early in the game. So let's go with that for the moment. And then the other one that I think is going to bother me is the feet. So I'm going to grab... let's just move this out a little closer to the model. Something like that. That's not too bad, but let's move it a little behind. There we go. So I think our shape wasn't too bad. I'm wondering if these might be just a little too big or not. I guess not really. They're pretty big on the hawk. So that'll work. All right. So let's just get the shape cleaned up just a little bit more though. We'll probably add the actual nails to the feet. The talons, I guess, if you want to be correct about it. And we'll do that later. We'll model those separately and then just attach them. All right. So let's just hit these with the smooth tool a little bit. Get them to thin out, and let's see how much detail we have here. Not a ton. So in the last video in part 1, we talked about using the multi-res modifier, and we'll apply that once we've decided that our general topology is complete. So that'll be really soon, but any details that we come in here and add right now are going to be lost, so we don't want to get too far ahead of that. And then really, let's maybe put a little bit of bend at the front of them. I think that's not too far off, but it looks more like a toe than a spike in these pictures. So we'll maybe kind of widen these out a little bit. That's probably okay. We'll do the same thing here, but we'll just inflate them. Just a little bit of a nub on the end. Just FYI to anyone wondering, I've never built a bird in Blender, so this will be my first time trying this type of features with the wings and so on. But really, all you need to do is get used to Blender, and then you can start to make more of whatever you want. Okay. So there's a little bit of a toe on the end. They got to have that kind of shape where they turn down right before the end. So let's make sure we have that. I think the longer you wait on certain things, the more you're going to regret it. And if you get too far ahead of yourself with tiny details, then they're all going to get destroyed anyway. So there's kind of a really hard balance to what to do first. Let's do something like that. Widen this out a little. Okay. And we'll be able to fix general sculpting details later, but we won't be able to keep really small fine details. So that's kind of the difference. So if later on we decide that his entire back thigh is not big enough, we can change something like that pretty easily. And I'm going to exaggerate these bones in the feet because that definitely looks like our references have a little bit of a distinction there. And then there's kind of a ridge which may or may not show up with this level of detail, but let's see. We'll try to throw it in. Looks like it comes to the top of the toe here. Oh, that's too big. Top of the toe here and just kind of goes around the foot. And then maybe down. Looks like it kind of separates the front and back toes a little. So we'll just kind of block that shape in just to get it ready. And then everything behind this line, I'll gently fill in so that this will kind of come to a like a cliff, if you will. So one side will be thick and then it'll drop down and be thin on the front of the foot. And so like here, this might be a detail that's getting a little bit too fine, but I think this I think this bump will show up just fine in Retopology, so that shouldn't be too bad. Looks like we could definitely use a little more detail on the bottom of the foot here, so let's just do the old trick with the smooth, or the drawing tool here. And Dino Topo was off, so that's helpful, but let's just hit this all here, right here. Yep. Give us enough room to do the feet. Go back to the inflate tool here and kind of set that ridge up. Okay. And then we'll smooth it one more time so that it's not distracting. Try to make a fairly clean edge on our new sculpting. Be just a little bit strong for a smooth tool. Okay. If you use the smooth tool with a really low strength, you can correct the surface without changing much of the shape. So that's what I'm doing here. I think these lines are distracting, and they give suggestions to your eye about the shape of the mesh that may or may not actually be true. So we don't want to see those right now. We just want to see that we have this kind of bump here in general. And then let's fill in between the toes just at the bottom here. I think that got a little out of hand. All right. Get rid of this on the bottom. I don't think there's actually like a ledge down there. And we really won't see it too often anyway, so we'll start with that. We may bend those around more here in a minute, but let's see. All right, so we've got the wings and the feet kind of started. I think I might just adjust some of the muscle here a little. I also don't want to get too far along and then have to make changes if we can spot them now. Let's pull the thighs in a little bit. Everything on the deer would normally be pretty small and thin, and since we're mixing it with the bird, I think it should be even more so on this model. So try to slim it up a little. Maybe we'll take under the legs here and pull that up. Maybe not quite that much. Maybe just a little bit. There we go. Just trying to make it look pretty lean. Okay, and then the one thing I notice about our wings, it looks like, so you'd have a joint right at the body. This should be pretty similar. And then more or less we're gonna have 1, 2, 3 bones in the wing itself. So I think we're gonna kind of have this here, and then this up in the front. 1, 2, 3. And I might have those directions backwards. I'm not sure yet, but we'll fix that as we go as well. All right. Okay. And then I was thinking for the tail, we'd do the same thing that these guys have and just kind of do long feathers that stick straight off. So I think I'm actually going to take this length back. Well, let's just use our grab tool. And we'll just destroy this and see how well our tools can fix it. Where is the simplify? Why did they have to change everything? We don't want face sets. All right. Let's try smooth first. Oh, that did okay. And then let's just inflate it. So when you get all these points real close together like that, once you get them to where they're close, they'll start to combine properly. Okay, and then we'll take our density tool. There you go. I think they used to call this the simplify tool. That might be why it's throwing me off, because it basically just ignores the really aggressive parts of the detailing, and it just puts the mesh back to how it was, if you will. And I'm gonna put our focus right here on the tail. All right. Now I've got something better to start with. So to me, it looks like this should be basically kind of a small nub. Maybe a little longer than that just for attaching feathers, but it should be kind of just flat. So we'll make this pretty small. And then if you look at the references of the deer, let's see if we can find one. It kind of looks like, I think these are his head. Yeah. It looks like the tail kind of comes out below the corner of the back of the legs there. So I think what we need to do is, this is probably close. We'll keep that. But what I notice about birds is that their back looks just flat the whole way. So I think what we want to do is kind of just keep this flat, but have the top of it go straight back from the body. So we may want to just keep it pointed straight back instead of, let's grab the other one. Just do something like that. And then the feathers will stick straight out, because really if you pose this tail, it should just be one long piece. It shouldn't actually bend. Okay, and let's just pull that out again flat. That should work. All right. And then again, snake hook feathers, because that worked well last time. You'll just have all your super long tail feathers that stick straight back off of that. So I don't think we need any actual modeling past this point, because there's not going to be any more joint work that we have to do in there. Okay, now we have pretty high topology. We don't really need it. So instead of just retopo everything, the other thing that I'll do sometimes is set my detail resolution a little bit smaller. Smaller number, larger planes. And that way, for areas like this where you don't need all these points, you can kind of quickly remove some of the excess that that you don't need yet, and that'll just save on performance a lot until we get to the point where we need it. All right. That's looking decent. The feet we can probably hit too. Just make sure it doesn't remove everything we've done. Yeah, see, it looks like it definitely does hurt the feet a little bit. So I'll go back to the draw tool for this. Okay. I may just leave those for now. With how small that area is, I don't think that's going to kill our performance in the short term here. All right, we'll move on from that. Maybe fix the shape of this a little bit. Looks like it's got kind of a big chunk on one side and it's missing the chunk on the other. So we'll just kind of correct that now. Okay, okay. Make sure we get the bumps in the toes nice and dramatic so they look right. Pull that up, pull that out, pull the middle of the toes up. Because I think these ones, we don't want them to be too slender or they'll look a little bit weird with this large of a body attached to it. Okay. Try to fix this back toe again. And this is just how sculpting goes. There's just a lot of back and forth. Every time you change something and it looks a little better, the next thing looks bad. Someday I'm going to try some speed runs, and there's been some cool ideas for that, but I'm going to have to really try to not get too lost on details in the speed runs. All right. So before we get too carried away, let's look at the rig for a bird. We'll just scale it up. We're not going to use this rig, but let's move it back a little bit, and then I'll rotate it. So you can kind of see this is the head of the bird on this. This is the bone system. These are the wings. So what I need to pay attention to is, for one, these bones here will replace the deer's shoulder bones, or that's where the shoulder bones will sit. So the wings are going to be a little bit behind there. And then you can kind of pay attention to where these joints are. So like I thought, we have 1, 2, 3 bones. I think the way this is set up, let's go to pose mode. Yeah, so these are basically feather controllers. So when you move the wing, these will go with it. And do these put limitations on it? No, not necessarily. So what you can do is you can have your main 3 bones here for the wing, and then all of these other ones will just basically keep the feathers in line. So that would be one way to do it. And honestly, that's probably easiest. So we'll try to align feathers to the bones like that. But basically what I think we're going to do, we'll move this on top of the deer, and we'll just start to scale it down. And again, this isn't one that I'll probably use specifically. Where is there we go. So we can see the bones through the mesh. Let's just make sure this thing's at 0. And we'll just scale it a little bit. And you can kind of tell too, the way this rig is set up, the wings are defaulted to out flat. So we'll want to pay a little attention to that. And then the other thing to note here is the tail. So this line of bones is the tail, and then these ones are feathers, kind of just like on the wings. So that should be super easy to make match. We'll just have it tie up to there. And maybe I will end up extending this a little bit on the tail, but we'll see. So if we want to, we may as well stretch out the sculpting for the wings now, so that we don't have an issue in a bit. Let's move this rig up. And then I'm going to take everything connected to these bones, and I'm going to move them out to where they would actually line up, just to see. So these actually are close to the shoulder bones of the horse rig that we'll use for the deer body. So that's already set up pretty nice. Basically, this sort of chest bone will be already part of the horse mesh. So we'll just decide to use either these or the ones in the horse mesh. And then the wings will attach just about where these bones are. So now we'll leave that in the viewport, and we'll sculpt this model to kind of match the rig better. Mr. Design, you were really talented at sculpting. How long have you been into 3D art? I want to say I opened Blender for the first time maybe in 2019, and there were long periods of time in there that I didn't work on it very hard, and there were time periods when I just kind of I didn't learn. But I'd say the last few months I've done more character art than I ever did before, so that's been a lot of fun. But I appreciate you saying that. I am good at sculpting. It's always hard to feel like you're good at this stuff because all you find online is the really, really good artists. So you can only compare yourself to them because that's all that gets pushed on the internet, basically. Okay. Looks like we're causing some problems here with posing this. Let's turn the strength down. And we'll just be a little more careful with it. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people that try to do a lot of the setup for their characters with modeling, and I used to do that myself. I just really think at some point it's easier to just sculpt everything and mess it up as much as you want to, and then come back and fix it with retopo later. But it's just easier to kind of get to it. All right, let's just kind of go for it. So I'm gonna break our shape a little bit. But you'll see here once we hit this with our correction tools, it's not going to matter at all. So now I don't think we have to have this big of wings, but it to me looks like it's probably going to fit pretty good. So let's bring these down. This is a better grab tool until we get too close to the body. So this tool, if I grab something out here, it changes the body. You can kind of see on the mesh, it's stretching the entire deer body. We don't want to do that. So I don't want to use the other grab tool because it just doesn't take enough with it. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just mask everything below the wings so that we stop messing with it. And let's turn this rig off for just a second. So I'm going to select everything below the wings. And this you can just keep adding to, so you don't have to get a good selection all in one go. And then here, we could probably have a little bit of this in between the wing, the bases of the wings move around, but we don't really need it to, because all we're trying to do is move these without destroying everything else. So now that this is all masked, it means that it won't move, except for where it's still gray. And his head is not connected to the body, so that won't be affected at all. So now I can turn my rig back on, and I can just basically crank on this, if you will. I can push it around as hard as I want. I don't have to worry about the body deforming. The only thing you get is just a little bit of weirdness at where it stops the mask. So like here, it's got a hard line, and then it's pushing everything down into the body. So you want to make sure not to mess with that too much. So I'll pull that back up. But again, we'll fix all that in just a minute. Let's see. Yeah, let's just make sure it's above, and then it makes fixing it not a problem. And then I don't want the entire base of these to be annoying like that, so I'm going to also mask those, even though they're broken right now. Summer says, did you switch for the drawing tablet this time? Is this part easier with the mouse? Yeah, I'm doing a little bit more sculpting than I was hoping to in the second part, but we just had to get the wings on and stuff. So all of the editing and painting and stuff like that, I have no idea how to navigate with the drawing tablet at all. So for editing type stuff or light sculpting, I prefer to just use the mouse and keyboard because it's a lot more familiar to me. Okay. And that's the problem too with drawing tablets, is even the cheaper brands are still not like nothing. They're still somewhat expensive. And if you really don't think you need one, it's hard to say you should go out and buy one. They just don't they don't change enough of the workflow unless you sculpt a ton. So it's one of those things they really want you to think you need it, and you don't, just like computer parts. All right. So I think you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm just aligning the general shape of the wing to kind of follow these bones. Obviously, the sculpting is pretty terrible at the moment, but we'll fix that really quick once we get this kind of lined up. So then the way this will work is, ideally, we won't have to change very much when we fit this rig to the model. And when you get the model to match the rig closer, it just makes a lot less corrective weight painting, and you just won't suffer later because you're doing a little bit more cleanup early. So let's get this just kind of flattened out. All right, and we don't want this part to drag on too long. It looks like the base of them still kind of goes too far, but let's hit this all with the smooth tool, and let's hide the rig because we shouldn't need it now. I'm just gonna kind of smooth out all the goofiness here. And let's see, dynamic topology's on, so we should be, yep. Should be able to deal with that. And this, realistically, the front of this wing really probably can be this big, so maybe we'll leave it for now, and then I'll just come up here and I'll clear the mask. I'll put my strength down, and then when I smooth all this out, it's going to fix all those little ridges that we made by moving the wings. Oops, And as if we never moved it at all, they're basically done. I'm going to take just a little bit of this. I don't think we need quite as big of bumps on there as I thought, so we'll just kind of get them flattened out a little more. Make sure we got the shape we want before we get further down the road. Okay, gonna put a bump on the front there. Fix this. I definitely abused the smooth tool too much, but it seems to skip some steps with moving things around by hand. Okay. So now there should be some sort of this like shoulder up here, so we'll come back at some point and add some more feature to it, but I think that's probably a good starting point for the blocking out of it. Take this bump down, pull this in maybe. Something like that. And then just one more check with the rig. This is going to be really close. We're going to be able to handle this a lot easier. And now that I look at it, let's just bring that bump in. Let's just do it. Because I also have another handy 3D model, a physical one, that I can look at. And at least on this one, the wings just come straight out of the shoulders. They don't really have a separate bump to them. So we'll hit that again. A little bit of smooth, a little bit of smooth. And then we'll get some more information on the actual shape of them later. I think for now this is looking pretty good. So I don't know that we're ready for the fine sculpting of it yet. We might want to kind of sign off on it. So, and that's always the hard part, is deciding that it's good enough and to move on. So that's probably where I get stuck the most on these, is fixing on one thing that I just can't get over. Let's see. No more new comments? Okay. Do that. Try to pull the top of the thighs into the side, maybe just a little more. We want the rear end to look kind of really petite compared to even a normal deer. This thing should have really aggressively sculpted sort of bird-looking legs. Okay, are we good to go here? Apparently. If you guys can't see the screen or something, let me know. OBS just flashed a warning that said there's no connection, but it looks like we're back online now. Man, it's definitely not easy to stream if you don't live in town. Internet options are not good here. All right. Pretty cool. Let's leave the body alone for a minute, and let's just rethink the head for a little bit here. So we don't want edit mode, we want sculpt mode. So I think the shape of the head's going to be mostly the same. let's bring in a couple references here. Flip that picture around. That's a better one than the other picture we had before. This one's okay. We'll just have those there, and then I think stylistically, we don't want that one. Stylistically, we should probably go more for something aggressive, so it's not just a normal deer head. So I think we should play with this a little more. And honestly, this one, I don't know why these are so fuzzy. This one even looks a little bit more like kind of a wolf head or something. It's a little bit more blocky. So let's just do something a little more unique with it. So you can see how skinny the nose is on these. I think we need a little extra room because I'm planning on putting some wolf teeth or something like that in there. And we'll need just a little bit more room inside the face to fit that. Yeah, right now I'm planning on putting fangs in it. So if we're going to have like a kind of scary mouth, we're going to want to pull the opening of the mouth back a lot. So if you have something like a wolf or the coyote-ish character that I made, you're gonna want a longer mouth because the jaw works just a little differently. So I'm actually gonna pull this up, and then let's maybe keep this somewhat thin. So I think the top part of the nose will look sort of like a deer, and then the bottom part will be the part that looks kind of more like a wolf a little. And there's not really supposed to be wolf in it per se, but it's just to make it look a little more aggressive. So let's pull that out. I'm just going to try to shoot for sort of more of a dog shape for the meantime. I think the skinny nose will be fine. Connection is fine for me. Okay, good. Yeah, you must have just had a little bit of a pause there on the internet connection, but I think we're fine now. So let's just do that. And then this thing doesn't necessarily look too aggressive from the front, but let's maybe plan to have kind of longer eyes. Make a little bit more aggressive of a eyelid shape. Really, this isn't going to be too small of a detail to do now, so let's start working on it. Make a somewhat aggressive eyebrow. And what do we have for details here? Go back to 128 for this part. Yeah. That should be enough. Okay. We are still in the inflate tool, so we'll just start to define the edges of the eyelid here. And again, I'm trying to shoot for kind of a wolf look more so than a deer. I think it'll just make it a little bit more aggressive looking. I've seen them drawn with like really wolf-like heads, and I think that actually looks kind of cool. So we'll see if we end up doing that or not. I'm just going to sink this eye socket in a little bit more. It's easier to work with the eyelids if the edge of them isn't super smooth. So we'll get that kind of pushed in. Okay. That's looking decent. Let's hit this with the smooth real quick since we had some topology differences. We don't want to get too detailed now because we have to retopo this anyway. So we don't want too much mesh because the retopo will not come out the same. So I think having not enough detail to sculpt will actually help us to keep track of what we can do. Summer says Google water deer. Okay. I have never heard of that before. Oh, okay. Let me grab one of those. I'll throw it in the scene. That is pretty cool, actually. So let's go back to object mode real fast. And then I'll go to... I'm just on my browser on the other page for now. I try not to show the browser because I don't want to be displaying things on accident or you know, showing people's content that maybe they don't want me to. And obviously all these pictures I'm using are just for reference. I don't own any of these. All right. So now I gotta interesting. I have to open these and save them as a different file type because they're coming in as some other goofy file. And then we'll just come in here and we'll add another reference. And which one did we just grab? There it is. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so a little bit of a deer with fangs. So we kind of have a cool reference for that already. See if I can find a good side view. Maybe we'll grab one. Huh. That one looks like a little one. It's all right, we'll get it. What is this? Oh, a JPEG, good. Take that right to our folder. Let's add that guy in too. Okay, yep. Nope, that's pretty cool. And they almost even have a little bit of a stubbier face, like a wolf would too. Not quite as long and slender. So we'll get somewhere between this guy and this guy. We'll move that over here, we'll move that over there. And then the kind of general body impression that these examples have is what we'll end up going for when we're done with materials and stuff. The legendary web.webp images. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's a really low effort attempt to keep people from downloading images off of Google or something, but it doesn't really do anything except for be annoying for 2 seconds. T-Bone says, water deer aren't real. I've never seen one. Well, I haven't either. And I don't know if they're real or not, but I think they're a great example for now. So we're going to pretend that they are at least as real as the Peryton. All right, now these guys, they have short little mouths. So we'll leave the mouth where it is. We'll just kind of push the face back a little bit. And then I don't think we don't need quite as much of a jawline. So we'll maybe pull that up. See what we have on the back side of the head. let's pull it out this way. Okay. We got a little bump here by the ear. That doesn't need to be there. Pull this in. What do our references say for the eye? Might be a little big, so we'll shrink those down. I don't really want to move them. I just want to make them smaller. So I'll move them in all directions. Something like that. We'll pull the bottom eyelid out more because I think it was getting sneaky trying to go back in there too far. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be a good reference though. Water deer. Never seen one. Kind of like a bird with teeth. I don't know if anyone gets that reference or not. Some people think they're real. All right. So we're getting a little bit goofy because of our lack of topology. But that's okay. That's what we want to see to know what we can actually do at this phase. And then at the end, once we're done with the general shapes, we'll be able to sculpt like wrinkles into the skin and things like that. Just stuff that you don't want that much topology. It's just too much. You don't want it actually on the model. All right. Now let's go in here. Let's get stuck inside the head and let's just inflate this mouth more. Because we're going to need a little bit of space to put the teeth and all that. We'll model some gums. I do have a nice, I think it was a coyote mouth or a wolf mouth or something that I bought at like CG Trader or something, and it's really high quality, so I may use that for the teeth. We'll see. Or I'll just have to do that off of the stream because that'll take a very long time. So unless you guys want to see how to make the teeth, but they're a pretty slow process if you do more than a couple. All right. Let's just take this and pull it back out. Don't want the lips to get too big. We're going to have a little bit of a twisting thing going on here if we don't keep this line distinct. Well, let's see if we can clip into the mouth. There we go. We'll just kind of sculpt the inside of the lips. There will be a gap between the gum and the lip, and that'll help with rigging later. Make sure we didn't ruin the outside. Okay, that's looking all right. Try to match the jaw with the top of the nose a little better. And then, yeah, we'll need just a little bit of space for those fangs to come out. They just kind of out the front, pretty far up. Yeah, I'm just not sure if those are real. So they're going to come up in here somewhere probably. So we'll just make sure that this isn't too much in the way. Then we'll pull the lip to give it a spot. Yeah. Then hopefully we can just remember later where they need to go. Oh, for the nose. Might still be a little bit aggressive for the thickness. Now, if it was a wolf, we would have kind of a thick bottom of the head. So we'll just get somewhere in between. Try to do something like that. I think really it won't matter. We can do whatever we want on this one because the style of them varies so much. Let's do that. We'll just keep showing the shape of the face. And then some of the details I know we'll need here. Let's just add a little bit of a crease there to the back of the mouth. And then I'm going to put kind of a tracing around the outside of this. We'll build the lips up a little bit more. And I'll do that just by inflating it. So kind of trace these. And then the end goal isn't to cut this in. The end goal is to widen the lips themselves. You'll see how much of a difference this makes here in just a second. Again, we don't want to get too specific here, but let's do inflate. We got to be in the positive direction. And we'll just do a little thin strip right by the edge of the mouth. And then we'll kind of pull this back into the face. And when we do that, we'll be able to start making this look like the lips. And that's a little bit almost horse-like, but I think that'll help it look right with some sort of long teeth coming out. And then let's just take this and kind of pinch it up. All right, what do we have for topology? Should probably stick with that so we're not getting too far ahead of it. And then I'll just hit it with smooth just a little bit for shading so it doesn't look quite as wacky. All right, yeah, so it's weird little details like this that will start to give it a unique look. And one thing I've learned when I'm sculpting is don't give up too soon on a sculpt or a model, because it's going to look a lot better once you get to materials. Even if the mesh is bad, or you don't really know if you like how it's going anymore, just try to get as far as you can, because once you start to do those little things, it really changes how it looks. Just do a little bit of a top lip. I think we'll end up getting rid of that for the most part later. We don't want it to look too much like a horse, but all right. And then, like always, I'm gonna overbuild this, so this is a pretty bumpy here, and then I'm gonna suck it back in to fix it. And then when I do it that way, it keeps the details I've added, but it doesn't just keep expanding the model that way. And then the other thing I'll do is put really weak creases right on the other side of something I want built up. And it'll just make a really nice contrast. Brianna says, left for 20 minutes and came back and a lot has changed with sculpture. I don't know if you're being sarcastic, but I hope so. I hope I have actually accomplished things, because to me it feels like we're going really slow, but I appreciate that. I think we are changing the character of this model a lot, though. It's really going to look like something else. All right. We don't want to get dead serious. All right, good. Some of this is looking pretty freaky. So we'll just calm it down a little bit. There we go. We don't want the shading artifacts to confuse the shape. There's something about the face that looks too friendly or excited or cute or something. So we're gonna have to get rid of that. Also, I'm noticing that these two sides are not mirrored very well. Which is interesting. So it looks like at some point we must have done some work that wasn't centered, or maybe this model isn't centered properly either. But I'll show you, we can fix that super, super easy. Let's see where this object is. Well, it claims it's centered, but if you look through the mesh with the X-ray mode, this blue line is the center, and you can see the point in the middle of the head is definitely not centered on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that over, and we're going to get just a little bit past the center line. Just a little, not much. Maybe too much. And we want our left side to be copied to the right side. So I'm going to use a modifier right now since we don't have other stuff we'll break. And we're just going to, you know what? Let's do it the fun way. Let's do it in edit mode. And we'll just take this with points and we'll delete everything on his left side. We get a nice even line down the middle. We'll maybe take off this little group here and some of these. Okay. So we're going to take those and just delete all of those vertices. And then I'm going to go back into object mode. And we're just going to put a mirror modifier on this. So this happens a lot when you're sculpting. I think it happens because you can apply the transforms, and if you don't do it at the right time, you won't realize that it's not centered. So I think what we'll have to do is, yeah, so we'll just mirror it. And then you can decide how far away to go from the center line, but we'll go just enough so that it looks like everything gets connected. We don't want to leave a whole bunch of open holes because they're super annoying to fix. Like some of this stuff here is getting a little funky, but our sculpting tools will basically handle a lot of that. Let's see. And then, oh, speaking about facial asymmetry, do you ever intentionally add it to your characters? Yes, but I do it at the end of the process, and I haven't done it a lot with major details. So I normally wouldn't take like the whole shape of the face on that side and change it. There's no reason you couldn't. I just don't normally. But what I like to do is add scars and other features like that you know, give it a little bit of an interesting difference. All right. So yeah, no, I think asymmetry is a good thing for this character. One version of this model I'm going to use as basically a character creator for this mesh. So I'll be able to just start with a fresh one and drop fill paint in to different areas to make different colored ones. So I'm going to keep this one simple mesh wise as much as I can. And then later on I'll come back, like for this exact character itself, we'll come add some of that fun to it. But okay. All right. So now if we look, so what I did is I noticed that my mesh was bad. I wasn't mirroring the same work on each side, so I just deleted the one half, mirrored the model, and then moved it back so that it's at x equals 0 again. And now you can see that this center line lines up with the very middle here of the mesh. It might just be an artifact. No, it should be. I think we're good to go. And then we'll make sure that the origin of this object is centered so that it's not offset for some reason. That looks like we're good. All right. Little side note there, but also not a bad one for people trying to learn sculpting. And then last step to help clean this, I'm just going to take this middle line of vertices that we just made with that modifier, and I'm going to hit M, and I'm going to merge by distance. And I'm going to make this just a relatively small amount. So we'll go 0.001 and see what it says. And it says that it removed 1,134 vertices. So that'll get rid of a lot of the super weird stuff. And there's still some going on because you can see that there's these kind of loose points. But I think our sculpting tool will just handle that fine. So the other thing you could do is mirror that, or you could select those again and merge, hit M and then merge by distance and just make it bigger until it seems to cause problems where it's too far. Because you don't really want it reaching like all the way up and down the nose and then you only have 2 points left. But see, since we did that, a lot of those weird extra points went away. There's still a few. So let's try one more time. Oh, okay, here we go. That got rid of that one. And then there's these really weird triangular shapes, and there's some excess points still and all that, but retopology tools inside of sculpting should fix that. So now back out of edit mode. All right, that's kind of a really nice thing that we just accidentally did for beginning sculpting purposes. So I'm glad everybody got to see how messy it gets when you don't pay attention. Oh, okay. Yep. Looks like the main body of it is slightly off center too, but we won't worry about that for now because again, we'll fix it with retopo and it's not nearly as bad as the head was. So we can go back into sculpting mode, and then I'm going to go back to this density tool, make sure Dino Topo's on, and then let's just look at the mesh. Let's go find these weird spots. So all these triangles, as soon as I click those, this tool is just going to basically redraw the entire area around the mesh. And let's take the strength off a little. I don't know what the strength would do for this tool too much, but I don't want it drawing. I just want it fixing the mesh. So you can see where all this super weird stuff is. As soon as I use this brush, it fixes all those errors. We don't have anything sticking up, just making weird seams. So that's awesome. So we'll just go all the way back around. So anytime you mirror, keep that in mind. Just select everything at the center line in edit mode and merge it, and then go into sculpting mode, and you can fix a lot of the problems in sculpting mode itself. It's like some of these are going to be a little trickier, but we'll get them. But yeah, so asymmetry, I think that's a great question because it's something you probably should do. You should make things a little more interesting if you can. What do we have going on here? Looks like we have that mesh folding still a little bit too much. So yeah, look at that. Those are ugly. Let's see if I can select this entire edge loop, and we can. So we're just going to, boy, that got pretty messy there. Let's just do another let's just do another cheat mode and edit mode here. So let's go to a front view. We'll try to rotate this down. Then we're gonna select just where this goofy stuff is. It's hard to see on the screen, I'm sure, but I'll show you in just a second. Looks like there's some in the mouth here. So we'll just grab all that too. No reason we can't be doing extra. Okay, that might be good. And then I'll just clear out any that I accidentally got that are too far back. I don't think these all had the problem. Nope, doesn't look like it. So we'll do that, and I'll merge by distance again. And I might not want to go that far. Back it off a little. And then we just want to make sure that there's not any of those overlapping planes, because once you have that, stuff will not work very well. All right. These ones are loose. So I'm going to actually cheat again, and I'm just going to do a cleanup and delete loose. So for anyone who is newer to this, don't worry. I'm just kind of fixing some of these issues I've created by mirroring this. Yeah, so this is weird looking, but I think it's fixable with sculpting. And if you see some of these that are just really giving you fits, because I can tell these planes are still kind of woven together in a strange way. If you still see that, you can move these around so that they touch other vertices. And once you do that, they're a lot easier to get the sculpting tools to fix it, because they're close enough to automatically merge. So let's go back to sculpting finally. So I guess, yeah, biggest lesson here is pay attention to mirroring before you get too far off. And I know sometimes too that ZBrush will cause that issue when you run the Zremesher tool, because I've done it before where it just comes in off-centered slightly, and if you don't catch it, you're going to have issues. Okay. And I'll just try to smooth this out again. Got a little bit of artifacts going. Close up some of these holes. Yep. Yeah, it's just always something with mesh. And that's one thing. I don't know if Blender has issues with symmetry per se, or scale, if there's a slight scaling issue, but I know that I don't know if it might have been Blender Guru. Somebody else found that the actual default view was tilted slightly. So anytime you thought you were aligned like this in a certain plane, it was actually off just a little bit. So I know Blender had to fix that at one point as well. Oh man, yeah, we got a lot of fun going on in this thing now. Huh. Let's just grab more. Let's just do it again. Ideally, once you get all this junk figured out, it shouldn't be this hard. Let's just see what it's going to do to us this time. Merging more. I think that's fine. For some reason, we have a big hole here. Let's just fill that with a goofy multi-sided object. All right. Definitely don't leave holes. I was tempted to just move on, but that's going to cause problems. All right, now if you if you were at that point and you realized it was a little bit off center, you could also just continue going and not even deal with it, because odds are that's going to just allow you to get some of that asymmetry anyway. And you could always mirror later to try to fix it. But I think we finally got this thing corrected. What a pain. But it's good to know about. That's what happens. And especially with dynamic topology, when you have this many points, stuff folds in on itself, and it can kind of make a big mess. So you just have to realize you're going to have to do some of this annoying stuff. And I don't ever want to just ignore problems when they come up. I know it's probably not the most fun to watch stuff like that being corrected, but if you're here to learn, then it's really good to know. It's good to know that in Blender, it's a good takeaway, I guess. There should not be a point when you get to saying, well, I broke this file or I broke this model, and then just being done with it, because that really doesn't have to be that way. All right. Finally got it fixed. Let's see. Oh, who's all in here? Looks like we got 5 people right now. So let's get on to something else. I think the face is a good general shape. We don't want to get too much more sculpting done. I think we could do a little bit more with kind of defining the jaw. That'll kind of help with the neck. We'll shape that up a little more later. I think we want to give this guy kind of a aggressive shaped jaw, just to make it look more mean a little bit. And then we're going to have a bit of a dip here in the middle of the face that turns and goes down like that. So you'll have kind of this little bumpy cheekbone here above the lip, and then your nose widens back out into kind of a bulb on the end right here. So you'll be able to do that at this phase without ruining it. Kind of show that. And then I'll pull that up in a minute, but that's fine. Be able to just kind of pull this around, and that's the cool thing too. Once you get these seams cut, you can kind of move them. You don't have to recut them, so you can just kind of drag them around. So if you really like how that cut went, but it's in the wrong spot, just move it. And then once you hit it with your retopo tools or your dynamic topology tools, it'll just correct itself. Now that got a little too far in general, but that's starting to look kind of cool. It's giving him a little bit of a face shape instead of just a big blob. Then I'm going to take another one of these and I'm going to run it right above the lip. And then he'll have to have a bit of a jaw defined here, so I'll make kind of a little cut, dimple kind of thing there. And then he'll just have his neck. So I'll get some sort of shape started in there just to kind of show it. This will kind of be the cheekbone here. So around that corner. Yep. Let's widen that out a bit. Puff it back up a little more. Yeah, that's looking kind of good. Puff that up. I think the nose is about as good as it's going to get for the moment. We don't want to get too far into sculpting. Yeah. All right. And then another thing to note with details like this that are kind of in between high detail, medium detail, and low detail, you want these to be a little exaggerated if you're still going to retopo after this, because a lot of the form of it, a lot of the puffiness of it will be taken out by the retopology. So definitely go a little bit excess on that so you can see the form afterward. And the way I'm using retopo as kind of a working tool is probably a little different because most people don't have something quite as good as Zremesher. And normally you would just try to retopo one time at the end if you can. But I have the luxury of kind of fixing it every time I feel like fixing it. So let's do that. Let's pull in around the ears just a little bit. We don't want to go too far because we want to keep kind of a wide base of the ear. That'll help give it that more wolf-like shape. All right. So any of the sculpting I'm going to do on the antlers, I'll wait. I'll make those asymmetrical for sure, but you don't want to put any roughness or bumps on there because that definitely won't survive through retopology. I'm going to smooth out this kind of strange shape that we have going on the back of his head and underneath here. That will all go away with combining the mesh anyway. Let's try to add a bunch of extra detail to this right at the eyes. I'm going to try to trick it into shaping these eyelids just a little better. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing on the nose. So where you have some of these details you want to keep, the way it's jagged like that, I think I can fix with smoothing, and it might allow my retopo to put a nice clean line where it otherwise won't be able to. So now see that I've done that. The retopology tool isn't going to see this big blocky shape there. It's going to see kind of a nice smooth surface, and then it'll guess where to put the new topology. Same thing with any of these creases. It may or may not help kind of define those high detail spots. I hate manual retopo, but I'm trying to learn it. Yeah, it is painful. I'll say that it's definitely gonna be better than something like Zremesher. If you're experienced enough with manual retopology, it's 100% going to be a better result than Zremesher or Blender's tools, and there's some other add-ons that are similar to Zremesher and are a lot cheaper, by the way. But manual is going to be the way to go if you really need to focus on deformations. And so the best example that I would give right off the bat is human faces. If you don't get that right on human faces, it's going to be really hard to convince people that it looks real, because the deformation just won't behave. So the beauty of this kind of head is there are no expectations. You're probably not going to show emotions in the same way, and you can get away with it. Plus, this will have body fur everywhere, except for like the tip of the nose and the eyelids, and maybe a little bit of the belly won't have it. But you can really cover up a lot of bad topology, and really you're just cheating. This is all just about learning how to cheat as effectively as you can, and in a way that no one can see. So, kind of like optimizing, hiding the bad part of your mesh behind something else that doesn't make any difference in the long run. That's the real thing to learn. But all right, I don't know. This guy's kind of looking like a reindeer again or something, but that's all right. I think the fangs are really going to sell it. I don't necessarily want it to be quite as nasty looking as this red one. I think that's a little maybe too scary. I think the teeth will sell that part. What else do we need? That's looking pretty cool. We probably don't need to get too much further on that before we retopo. So I'm gonna pull this nose in. I think it just needed to be a little bit thinner. And then it looks like the way the eyes sit, the head is physically turned downward a little bit, and maybe the eyes aren't matching that. So I'm gonna save it. And at risk of destroying all this progress, I'm just gonna pull the entire nose really slowly from different points to try to correct that shape. Because the bottom of the jaw should probably sit level when it's closed. So we got to go up just a little bit more with it. That's really hard to do without losing your details. But I think that's already helped. And then it looks like the way the antlers lay back and all that. If we just, oops, let's put, let's set our origin to this object so we can rotate it about itself. So let's just go origin to geometry, and then I'll rotate it in X direction just a little bit. Again, we're cheating, but I noticed that the way I sculpted this, it can be rotated anyway. So I think this is actually a little bit more of how the head will sit. I tend to do that. I tend to do that when I make heads of this type of shape. For some reason, I tilt them down too much, but I think that'll fix it. That'll let us do what we need to do there. All right. Yeah, we'll just see. We'll add fun materials and teeth and stuff that trick the viewer into thinking it's something different anyway. All right. Oh, interesting. So horns we'll do later. Wings, we should probably decide what the actual wings are going to look like. I guess I'm picturing something like a dragon from any sort of game or show. You can really see the bone mass in the wing, and it really is kind of a thick object. I think those are probably a better reference than just a bird for this, because they're going to be carrying a ton of weight. Imagine a deer-sized body actually flying. That's going to have absolutely massive wings. So let's just kind of get that idea onto the model. They're going to be thick. They're going to be considerable width, and then the ends of them probably thin out a lot, because I think we could have them come to a little point. If I remember correctly, there'd be a little bit of a kind of a flared tip to the end of it there, something like that, but we'll come check on that later. And then I want to get this, we'll call it a tube. We want the tube of this thing to be lined up fairly nice, and it's just another one of those things when you retopo, it's better if all of this is in a pretty easy, nice, straight line for the tool, so that you don't have your mesh turned at some weird angle. So you're hoping that it'll find a nice perpendicular in one spot, and then it'll keep that topology all the way through the end. And if you're doing it manually, that would be the goal. But yeah, Music. Speaking of which, if you want a little bit of a better tool, try Retopo Flow. If you want to try it, it's I can't remember how much it costs. It has a little bit of a cost, maybe like $30, but I find it to be a lot better than Blender's just editing options for Retopo. So it'd be worth checking out if you haven't. But it just allows you to do things like cut loops and fill in gaps with pretty straightforward controls compared to just having to know all of Blender's Loop Tools controls. Let's do that. And then for the last little thing on the wing for now, because I don't really know, I don't know if this is going to be like those dragon wings, that they're really kind of sharp, aggressive bone shapes, or if this will just kind of have a cheat to it and it'll just be like a big, soft, kind of fuzzy looking, you know, as if it has short feathers on it. But I think for now, that gives us a really good idea of the scope. I think those will work, because when this thing folds up, it'll be like that. And then what? I think this will fold in. Oh, it's not going to take the end of that, of course. And then these will fold. Yeah, but this will fold down with the. So yeah, I think that's good. I think we've got them set up to be able to work with them nicely. All right. So really, at this point, I think I would start looking at combining the head with the body. I really think about scale. So, because once you get past combining them, it's a lot harder to scale things without destroying it. So if we compare our mesh, which is this kind of gray, to this deer, it looks like, just in relative terms, this one's neck is just maybe a little longer than ours, and the body's a little bit bigger. So to me, that means maybe let's just pull the head out a little more, make sure we have enough of the neck length. And then it's okay that the body is trimmer, because it's going to be hopefully even skinnier looking than a deer, which is already pretty small of a form. I think the big back feet are good. I don't think you could have little tiny bird feet on something that carries that much weight. Let's, man, I just think we need to give it a little bit more of an arch underneath, like that. And then maybe pull back this knee just a little bit, just to really tell that this thing is kind of tiny. Won't really have much of a pot belly. And then the back will be fairly straight. And this is all going to have to just be kind of filled in with some sort of muscle shape. I don't even know what we'll do there yet. Let's see what this thing has. On this one, it's just a Pegasus thing. It just kind of fits right into the shoulder. So I guess we're on the right track with that part. Maybe widen these out. All right. And then, so I think we just should move on at this point to combining, and then we'll start to talk about like UVs and textures, because I think that's really going to be the interesting stuff on this. So we'll deal with anything else on the wings later. So I'm going to combine these first, and then we'll hit them with the retopo, and we'll just move on from there. So let's combine these. So that when you combine two objects in Blender with the Boolean tool, you want to make sure that one object touches the other in one nice clean surface around. So the way that these come together, you can see this definite edge. If you have spots where it goes in and out, I think it'll confuse it a lot. So we'll try to Boolean this. If it doesn't work, it's easy enough just to add, to move it around with sculpting and kind of just reshape how those faces fit together. And then it tends to be able to fix itself. And so what I'm doing here is I'm telling Blender to combine this first object with the head, and then I told it to use this union setting, which means that you can tell by the yellow it's all one mesh now. So I'll just apply that modifier, and it'll take it a minute if it has a lot of topology, and then you can see we still have the original head. So I will usually I'll throw that in the copies. So if I have a need for just the head later, I have it. And then I'll come in here and I'll check. I don't know what version of Blender it was, but one of these versions started adding, well, it could have just been settings too, but it would kind of leave the extra faces on the inside of this so that it wasn't a nice solid line, but I can't see any of that, so I think we're good to go. So let's hide a couple of these references for just a minute. And now we've got this really weird seam here, so what I'll do is I'll go back into sculpt mode. And now that this is all one model, if I come to my draw tool, 0 strength, and then turn on dynamic topology, we'll set this back to our 128. So you can kind of see what it goes from a ton of detail on the head to not very much on the neck here. So we'll just come through this entire seam and draw over it. And what that'll do is get rid of any of those really weird triangles and where there's just too many of them. So now we have a nice smooth connection there. And when I smooth this out, Blender will basically automatically space the vertices between each other, and it gets rid of that really harsh seam. And then you can just continue sculpting from there. Musik says, I actually have tried Retopo Flow. It's helped me avoid a lot of mistakes I kept making with the default Blender style of Retopo. I mainly just need more practice with Retopo in general. Yeah, it is definitely very involved. And what's awful about it is if you get too far down the line, it's really hard to just backtrack on retopology. So sculpting is great because you can do whatever you want and you can go back and forth and drag things around, but retopology is not quite as straightforward. Because once you break that edge flow, or you don't have a way to terminate loops so that they're coming to a nice point, if they're out of alignment and they're, yeah, it gets really messy. But I know it's helped me before when I would do it to go look up examples of kind of known retopology, because like the human face, there's basically a right way to do it. And if you just go find examples of that, you're going to have a lot easier time. Because you can just sit there and see like about where should I put the point on the cheek and stuff like that. And that's the hardest part. But yeah, retopo is not fun. And that's why I ended up buying ZBrush, which I have really no intent to use the sculpting tools at this point, because I'm too used to Blender and I can barely navigate ZBrush at all. But Zremesher is just so fast, and for being 97% good, it's worth it to me. But I think in my fastest week of character building. I made 2 or 3 full characters in the same process that we're kind of doing now. I probably went a little faster because I wasn't getting as distracted on the topology and whatnot, but yeah, I mean, 3 retopologies in a week would normally have taken me dozens of hours, and I'll show you once we get this into ZBrush. It's really nice. Once you run it, it'll have some spots where it doesn't perform very well, and most of the time you can just kind of drag the topology around with these relax tools. So if let's just say, like on this leg, if you wanted to follow the shape of the leg better, but the topology wasn't aligned, you can literally just grab these faces and move them. So one spot that'll come into play is on the eyelid, where I'll be able to align the face of those edges so that it's exactly where I want on the front face of this eyelid. And that's just something that once you have enough topology and it's all kind of spaced evenly, you can just drag it around. And I've just never found Blender's own tools to be able to do that well without manual topology. So, all right, now let's make sure we don't want to add a whole bunch of details at this point because we're going to go remove them anyway. But I just want to hit some of these spots that I really don't like the form, because we're going to end up having to fix it anyway. So the front of this wing to me looks a little bit like it's rotated. So I'm just going to make it kind of nice and thick. And then when we do our finer details, we'll come back in and just kind of shape around the joints. Yeah, really, I don't know. With the wings, I don't know if you want them to stick that far off of the body, really. You would think they'd have to be more tied into the shoulders to actually work. So let's just maybe try to get aggressive with it and drag them in. Do something like that. I think they can have a little bump there. I just don't think they can stick out that far. And this kind of matches the shape that the rig had as well. So maybe that'll do us a lot better job. Yeah. Now it just kind of looks like it's tied in a little better. And then we'll have it'll fold here. It'll fold here, and then probably just at the end. So I think that's good. All right. The tail will be good. We'll just have long feathers that come off of it. I can't imagine we'll have to bend it. So the way like these references are showing, the feathers themselves can maybe bend, but I don't think it'll actually wrap. It won't have a super long tail or anything. It'll be more like these hawk tails. So they'll just be a stub on his butt, and then he'll have tail feathers that stick out from that, and they're just stuck to it. So I think that's what we're going to do. So we'll leave the tail where it is. The neck is kind of the right shape. Antlers are close enough. The feet are fine. Let's see if the belly has any rounding to it or not. That's one other thing that's really hard to see, is if this just comes to a flat spot or not. The shading doesn't really help you see that. Oops. So I'm going to try to just round that out a little bit. And this is where it helps to just rotate in all kinds of circles. Let's maybe pull the side of this in just a little. And it seems like I'm getting nitpicky, and I might be, but these are just things that are going to have to be fixed after we have nice clean topo, and that's not the time if possible. You don't want to be doing that. Just fix the neck. I don't think his neck needs to stick out so far at the bottom. All right. And then I'm going to look at this deer reference one more time. Good chance to save here, maybe. And just look at the way the neck comes out. I think it'll be fine with how it is. I just want to make sure that it'll be able to bend enough. But I think it should do well for us. It's a little longer, but that's kind of by choice because these ones are craning their necks a lot more. And this one just is a little bit stubbier. I think ours is going to be more like this guy here. Pretty lanky looking. So we'll hide our references. And then I will throw these into ZBrush again. So let's save this. And then this really, to me, looks like it's centered pretty well. We just did the head. If you zoom in on the body, I mean, it really, it's close. It might be off just a tad, but I think it's not so far off that it'll be a problem with Zremesher. So then the other thing is Zremesher and a lot of programs can't handle tons and tons of polygons. I think Zremesher should be able to do, what do we have? Less than 500,000 vertices, because you can sculpt far more than that in ZBrush itself. Oh man, one more change. I think we need to widen this. I think I'm wrong. We got to widen this tail out at the back side of it here. Like that. We got to have somewhere to attach those feathers. It looks like a platypus. Something, but all right. 467,000 vertices. So let's export this. Oh, what have I been using? FBX. And let's just call this Peryton 2 so we don't get rid of our old one just in case. We'll select objects and mesh. Apply transform isn't going to matter. Animation's not going to matter. Export. And then we'll just open up ZBrush. Epic Ghost says, give him a big belly. We can, but we can also do that later. I don't know if you guys are familiar with shape keys or not, but we can do all kinds of stuff with this once we get the topology fixed. I just want to make sure that the form is something we can work with in a minute, but once you have that right, you can do whatever you want. So I'm going to open up this sphere, then I'm going to import this mesh, and look, today you guys can see the little pop-ups. Last time you could not. Yeah, and Epic Ghost, my goal is to make a base of this with generic, basically paint splotches, and then I can start a new file with generic paint and go from there. So I could generate a few of these. It's something I haven't really done with characters before, but I think it'd be kind of a cool thing to try to make just like a preset that had options, if you will. All right. So here we are in ZBrush. I love being on the normal monitor so that it actually opens properly. You can see our terrible mixed up topology. It goes from fairly large to pretty small, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw it through Zremesher once and see how it does. And then Zremesher actually has a paintbrush that lets you go back and give it guides to tell the remesher how to follow the lines. So if we need it, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll do it ourselves in Blender. So I'm going to set the target count Let's set it to half. If we could get to half with good topology and be at around 250,000 vertices, we could work with that. Okay, let's go to half. Let's keep creases. All right. And then we'll just click Zremesher. It only takes a few seconds. And so this is targeting half the amount of polygons. And so for everybody who is sitting there just sucking it up and saying, I'll do my own manual ones, I mean, come on, this is craziness. This just saved me who knows however many hours. Now, I notice it's not symmetrical. You can tell some of these points aren't centered, and that's because I forgot to enable symmetry up here, so I'm going to do that. Did that go on? Yeah, we're good. And to rerun it, my settings are still in there, so I'll just click the Zremesher button again. But I mean, look how clean that is, and that it literally takes a couple minutes. And you can see areas where some of the detail is gone. So the bumps we had on the nose, that's definitely not there anymore. It was a kind of a raised edge on there, definitely gone. I would say the eyelids look fine because I can pull these loops to align with the eye better in Blender, so that's not a big problem. The horns look great. It looks like they come to a nice even edge loop. Yeah. Ears are fine. The wings are just tubes, so they did fine. I think it, for the most part, went pretty well. Sometimes you'll see stuff like this with, I don't know, it just gets a little confused at how to remove the topology. So that might be one spot we add a guide to. Try to get recentered here. Okay. Sorry for my lack of ZBrush navigation skills. First time I used it, I got in here all excited and I literally couldn't figure out what the hotkeys were to move at all. Okay, so we really don't want more topology than this because in a lot of places it's excessive. Wow, this could have probably saved a lot of my characters I deleted from being so broken. Yeah, that's tough. This is really nice, but I also learned over time that there are so many ways that you can fix meshes. I mean, there's a point when the file crashes if you open it, but until you get to that point. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough to have to spend that long. And so people ask me why I would spend so much money on a software. And I told them I saved so many dozens of hours within a week, and I can build so many more characters, and the result is better. But no, it's a great tool. And by the way, whoever may see this in the future, if you want me to just like run this on a character you have, you know, get it cleaned up to where there's nothing overlapping or whatever, and just hit me up on the channel or the email address on the channel, whatever. I can run this and send you back a model. That won't take me very long. I'll probably ask you if you want to do it on part of a video or a live stream just so I can get some views out of it or whatever. But you know, if you got a character that you're like, I don't know what to do with retopology, whatever, send it in and we'll get it done. I thought about doing like a little $10 paid service to do it, but I just don't need to do that. So if you guys want that done, just send it. Just let me know. Might take a day or two to get to it, but other than that, obviously it doesn't take a lot of time. So all right, now at this point there's things I don't like on this mesh. So the first thing I'm going to try is I'm going to back up on this And again, like I said, I don't want a ton of extra topology. So I'm going to go up here. This is the brush selection. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go all the way down to this Zremesher guide. I'm going to make my tool smaller. We'll zoom in here. So what this thing does is it suggests to Zremesher how it should follow the topology. Let's get this to be small. So when I draw a line on here, you're basically doing what you would in Retopo flow, where you're going to draw lines and it'll fill planes in between those as well as it can. And it's possible that we'll just have too much topology on the mesh now that it won't be able to build. And so we'll lose some of this detail anyway. But what you're doing is you're telling it it's really important that we keep these arcs here. And so it should kind of evenly space this stuff between here. So I try to make my best effort to really space those out properly. And that'll look decent. And then I think the lips are thick enough on here, we won't have a problem. If you had really thin lips or fine lips, then you might want to add a little bit more to it. I really think our eyelids themselves came out fine, but let's just hit them to see if it changes anything. So I'm just going to draw on these however it looks like, the loops should flow. If you want to undo the last one you did, just Control Z. And then we're just following the topology, telling it space in between here, space in between here, and it can be helpful to like really define the bottom of a valley on the mesh. And here I want to just do the ridge, the eyebrow. Same thing down here. I'm just going to give it a couple suggestions. That might be a little bit too far out there, and I'm just trying to do it based on shading. It's not going to be perfect because I can't actually tell, from one view, how well spaced that is. But it did okay. It did okay on that anyway. And let's see. I think our ears were fine. And this still has symmetry on, by the way. Wings. Wings are simple shapes. Those should be fine. No. Let's move. Okay. I think the feet are actually okay. Leave those alone. So the one other spot that I pointed out earlier, I really didn't like how it did the leg here. And it's probably partly because we have such a strange mesh, but we're going to try to use it anyway. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this. Oops, we didn't want the top of that. There we go. I'm just going to draw on the front of the leg. I'm going to try to suggest to it that this is a point where it switches directions of the topology. And then we'll just have to see if it has enough information to fix that or not. So basically, if I take this and I follow this down here, and then I follow this to here, and then these start to even out a bit, it should correct the topology through this area to kind of match it better. That's the hope. I think the rest of it did fine, so try to zoom out here. I know it takes me a minute. There we go. Yeah, these movement controls are literally like the same buttons in different combinations as Blender, so it just completely messes with my brain. But, all right. Click Zremesher with the guides on, and if it can, it will make better use of the amount of points we're giving it. So let's look at the nose first. You can't really see that there's any extra bump there. I think what we really would have hoped for is to see more of the edge flow matching there, but we'll just slide these in Blender to fix that. Let's make sure symmetry is on. So I know that was something that it didn't do the first time. Yeah, it looks like symmetry's good. Looks like we already did fix the eyelids though. So here you can tell that the eyelid kind of raises up here. It's new topology down beneath. And then your corner Ingon looks like, where is it? It looks like it actually doesn't have one here, so that's pretty good. But the way it adjusted this topology to follow that eyelid is pretty nice. If anything, it'll need just minor adjustments to kind of make sure we don't have weird texture here. But we'll fix that in Blender. And I don't want to just go add more points. We really don't need more. This is at 264,000 vertices. So it's workable. I'm used to working with that, but it's not ideal. All right, now here's where it still looks like it's a little confused. But now in this, we'll call it, I guess, the groin area. It really looks like it followed the suggestions where it kept the leg sort of on its own shape. And then there's this crease in here, and then it switches and starts to go to the body. So it's not terrible. All of this stuff in here, Blender's smooth tool in sculpting will fix that. So that's not gonna hurt us. We'll do that ourselves. And then just make sure there's no more abnormalities, like sometimes like this point here, where there's points in the center of the mesh that are it's not able to follow a center line. That'll cause a little bit of annoyance with UV unwrapping and stuff. But for the most part, we could also just come in after this is done and create a triangle from that rectangle. That's not a big deal, so I'll show you that when we get back into Blender. Anyway, I think we're good here. I think this is good to go back to Blender. So we'll zoom back out on it. The form is basically the same, but it's got a lot better topology, and it's just over half as much points. So now I will export this. And it likes to go to some random folder on my computer. Peryton. We'll just call this body 2. And then I'll save it. And we should be able to close ZBrush. Oh, sure, let's save the file. Just in case. It's always good. It's always good to save your steps along the way, just in case. Except for when you forget which ones are which and you have 400 versions of them. Peryton. Do you make these models for games or just as a hobby? I would love to make a game someday. I don't have the time to learn like a completely different set of software. I think someday I'll go that way. For now, these are just kind of for my own animations, which admittedly I haven't posted a lot of over the years that I've been on YouTube. I'm trying to kind of really hit it harder with actually using the characters, but at the end of the day, I really just like making them. And I'm going to have streams and videos in the future that are kind of like speed runs, where I'm going to try to get people to vote beforehand on what pieces and parts to combine. And then whatever wins the vote, maybe I don't know until the stream starts or something, I'll have a whole set of parts of things and different base meshes, and we'll see how fast I can slap them together and make something that's finished. So really, I just kind of like building the characters. At the end of the day, that's kind of what I'm doing. But my own animations are the main goal, more so than a game at this point. But I'm hoping over time meet people, and we'll get some sort of a group going that we can work on a game or something like that someday. But I think that's a few years down the road, especially with my lack of knowledge of Unreal Engine or any of those softwares anyway. But it would be a lot of fun. Okay, so we've got our old dirty mesh here. I'm going to select our group, our collection here, so that the new file goes into the right spot, and import it. It was an obj, and this one we called Peryton body 2, and for whatever reason it gets scaled up huge, so we're going to go to 0.01 to bring it in, and it'll go right to the exact same spot. So I'll select our original mesh and move it over to the side. And we'll look at the planes. So now, this still is a dense mesh. This one has more points. Our original one has more points, but it's not very usable. I've tried to cheat and not retopo characters, and it doesn't go very well with texturing. So I don't really recommend it. This one is relatively great topology, but it is still pretty high. So this is a thing where you would really have to think, do I need to go back and reduce the topology more? In this case, I'm not going to, because I'm actually more used to about probably 400,000 vertices on certain characters, just because you have to balance the small sculpting versus just fixing the mesh. So it kind of becomes a tricky thing, but I'm going to just throw this existing one, our original body mesh here, into the copies file. So we have it. And then we're going to shade smooth our new one. And you can really see how clean it looks now. There's not all the shading errors and goofy looking stuff. It's just a nice smooth mesh. That'd be cool. Community projects. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. Music Monkey. Oh, I'm actually the audio scientist guy that emailed you. I'm on my alternative account. I'm also hoping to learn coding, music, and modeling. Learning all these new skills is tough. It is tough, and that's a lot of stuff. You know, a list of 3 topics sounds like it might not be that big, but it's a ton of stuff. And also those community projects are a great idea. Yeah, I think they'd be incredible. And I know some people that are kind of trying to start one up. So we'll see where that starts to go. And if I'm able to commit to that one, I might get in on it a little bit. I did tell those guys specifically that when they need any rendering, they can send it to me. So that's one part of a project I can help with no matter what. But yeah, no, I've been kind of waiting to do this stream, and then I was going to send you back an email. I have a little short animation that I want to post on YouTube, but I was going to actually see if you could slap some audio on there and just make it that much cleaner. So I ended up throwing just a basic like TikTok song on it just to give it something, and it just doesn't have the effect that I would want. So I will definitely reach out to you soon, so be watching for that. But yeah, I'm glad you're here. It was fun you dropped in. I was wondering if you'd happen to be one of the people in the chat one of these times, but all right. So where are we? So this is a kind of clean model. There's some issues, but it's also somewhat high topology. So what you can do in Blender now, if we want to add stuff like wrinkles for skin, what would be another good example? Like bumps. So on the horns, we'll add bumpy stuff and texture. You can do all of that in Blender. And if you get some brushes, you can do it easier. I'll probably use Substance Painter, which I know is another paid software. I guess this isn't necessarily a beginner tutorial, except for just the concepts, but Substance Painter will let me paint those bumps and roughness and stuff like that as just a map. And kind of like I talked in the last one, what we want to do is we want to get a flat map that the program can read when it renders. We don't want to actually displace the mesh. So if I were to come in here, let's save the file because this is going to be a disaster. But if I come in here and I just say, you know what, I want a lot more topology, and I just start subdividing this. And then let's see if I got enough RAM. Yeah, let's do one more. And so this thing's going to get just stupid high topology. So like, I mean, you guys on my low resolution stream, you can probably barely even see. It just looks like a solid object. So yeah, you could do this. It's 4.2 million vertices. So if you were to actually like physically sculpt all of the deformations that you want for little tiny details, this is what you would have to do if you didn't use any of the tricks. So we don't want to do that at all because this won't animate. It'll be really hard to paint. It'll just be slow in general. So what we're going to do, we're going to back that off. Okay, now 264,000 is a fairly large amount of topology to use multi-res modifier, but it'll still work. You just want to be careful. So once you put on the multi-res modifier, it will allow you to sculpt in basically virtual levels of detail, and you can change them for the viewport, for sculpt mode, and for rendering. And you can also take any one of those levels of detail and bake it to those flat maps that we're talking about. So if you had a whole bunch of bumps drawn onto your model, you could bake that level of detail to a map and save it somewhere, save it as a separate map for your high detailed bump map, and then you can remove that layer from the model completely, and basically you'd have something like this that's simple and smooth. And then when you render it, Blender will interpret those, and the render engine will interpret the bumps, and it'll virtually make them without displacing the mesh. So you can actually animate something with what would be millions and millions of vertices effectively. It'll look like it is, but you can animate it as if it's something with 40, 50, 60,000 or less, and it'll look the same. So that's kind of the reasoning. So now let me show you here what this does. I am not as much of an expert on multi-res because a lot of the time I don't do a huge amount of small detailing on the mesh, but there are a couple things I want to add to this one. Substance is free with the student license for those who are interested. Thank you, Epic Ghost, for sharing that. Yeah, if you guys are in school, go get all the student licenses you can, try everything out. I can't do that anymore, and most softwares are not even willing to extend my 30-day trial periods. So take advantage of those, because you can figure out what you really want to use, and then someday when it's time to pick the one software to pay for, then you'll know without having to try them all like I am right now. But yeah. So let's take this. This is 264,000, and let's add some subdivisions with multi-res modifier. And I am gonna try to make sure I do this the right way. So we want to be able to tell this that in certain levels of detail we're going to sculpt the entire mesh, and in certain levels of detail we're only going to sculpt those details. So it gets a little weird with making sure your these levels are set correctly. But let's just start off. So this starts on 0. I can't really do anything with it yet, so I'm going to click subdivide. Okay, so now it's showing 1s over here. So now if we look at this again, let's do one more, just for reference. It's not going to show up right here, because it's kind of just representing the mesh. But if we go into sculpt mode and then look, so now when I change this LOD or level of detail for sculpt mode, this is allowing me to change what the sculpted mesh looks like at various levels of detail. And for like the viewport level, see how that's not doing anything? Basically, that's going to control when you're trying to animate this. You can turn it down to 0 so that all of your fine details are hidden. It's not processing them in the viewport. And then if you want to see them in the viewport, but you're not trying to animate or something, you can crank them back up. That's what that does. The sculpting one, I think, is basically what is actually controlling the sculpting work. So if I'm in sculpting mode and I'm set on level of detail 2, and I start, let's just start sculpting. I know I have to be careful with the tools because if you use the wrong one on high detail, you're just going to crash. So let's just say I want to draw, and also, by the way, from now on, we will not use dynamic retopology or dynotopo because it will destroy our clean topology. So as soon as you enable that, it will break your mesh. So we're not going to do that. We are going to make sure we turn back on X symmetry because since we brought in the new model, it's not set up to know that yet. And I'm going to really gently draw something on this and hope we don't crash Blender because we're sitting at 9.5 million vertices with this 2 levels of sculpting detail. So I'm just, okay, that seems to perform fine. So I'm going to just start drawing on here. Okay, now, yeah, it doesn't look like anything too crazy yet, right? Well, we should be able to come in here now and draw really, really tiny details. What do we got going? That doesn't look small enough to me. Oh, okay. Let's undo that. Let's see, because it's actually running fine. Let's go up one more level. So if you start off with a super low polygon mesh, if you can get it down to like 20,000 and then add subdivisions, it will actually run a whole lot better because most of that stuff is being stored virtually. With this starting off high, I'm pushing it here, trying to subdivide this more, but for science, we're going to do it. So let's go up to 3, and then we'll get back into sculpting mode. Yep, thinking about it. Okay, now it says we have 16.9 million vertices, which is obnoxious. Let's go back into sculpt mode. Luckily, I did save this, so we should be safe if it does crash. Let's go into sculpt mode and let's just draw another blip there. And then let's just take a sharp crease and make it pretty small. Yeah. So now you can kind of tell how much more detailed of a sculpt I can get. So if you're trying to make really small stuff, or you're trying to make wrinkles or scars, or honestly, like you could just be doing, let's just draw a bump. Like if you're trying to draw the bumps on the horns, you could sit there and actually draw every single bump to make it look like you want to. Now that's clearly not going to be practical. It's going to be easier to use texturing tools for that. But you can see the point. So this allows us to work with, it says now we're running 26.5 million vertices. That's how specific this sculpting can be now. And if you noticed before, we couldn't do anything like that before. This is way too fine and it's nice and smooth from even up close. It's very, very well-defined topology. So let's just get rid of that. But now let me change. So if I change the sculpting LOD here, what you're going to see is that all of that stuff that we sculpted went away. And the reason is those sculpts are basically stored in this sculpting level of detail, from what I understand. And if somebody knows more, then correct me. But if you want this stuff to be permanent, you want to check the sculpt base mesh option. And hopefully this won't crash Blender either. Okay. And it might have to be done before you do the sculpting. Yeah, it will. So what that option does is, actually, I think I know how we can cheat to get rid of this, but what that option does is it allows you to, if I draw on here, so that's turned on now, it was not before. So let's do another bump. Oh, Blender, come on. Survive. Ah, did it. My CPU cooler is getting louder. It's running it. Okay, that's good enough. So this one was sculpted with the base mesh sculpt option. So now if we set the sculpting back to 0, it's keeping that. The other ones went away because they were not sculpted with that option. So I don't know if that's clear. I didn't understand that for a very long time. But basically what that option does is it says, okay, at lower levels of detail, you're not going to be able to show those little tiny squiggly lines that we cut in, but do your best. And so it's going to create that little bump. And then as we add back the levels of detail, you'll see all those small details come back. But it's not actually, these ones on top that we did first, these ones are not actually changing the mesh itself, if that makes sense. So if it's something like, oh, I don't know, say we wanted to sculpt on the shoulder, and we were going to start off with like general sculpting for the muscle detail and bigger details like that, then we won't want to just do it virtually, if you will. And I don't know if that's the right term, but that's what makes sense to me. So you'd want to turn on the sculpt base mesh option to do big details like muscles. Or if you're gonna click and drag a big part of the mesh, you'd want to change the base mesh, or just try to do it before you put multi-res on, or in a lower level of detail as well. So I don't know if that helps. It took me a long time of dinking around with this and watching videos to understand what this thing's doing. But basically just this allows you to work with ridiculous amounts of topology, and it doesn't have to run it. Because if you try to go and run 26 million vertices in just Blender on a mesh, it's probably going to crash. And I think I would crash mine, and I have a Threadripper CPU. I really don't think Blender has the ability to run with that much stuff, at least for sculpting. For other things, yeah, it can run a scene with millions and millions, but so now we don't want to keep this, obviously. I mean, I guess we could, but if you want to get rid of it, basically, since we sculpted this little bump on the base mesh. So if I get rid of the sculpt LOD, our top ones go away. Our bottom ones do not if I turn off the modifier. So if I delete this modifier, it's going to keep this one because we told it to sculpt that onto the base mesh, if that makes sense. But if you realize you made a mistake and things were on the wrong levels of detail, there's options to move it around. It's a little out of my knowledge still, but basically if some of the fine details were on the wrong level, or the base mesh got sculpted, or blah, blah, blah. There's options to kind of go back and restart it. So just be aware that you can play around a lot with it. And then I'm going to get rid of this cheek bump, although it doesn't really hurt us. So now we're back to our 264,000 vertices. Multi-res is turned off. So for the meantime, I'm just going to use it without multi-res and get some of the general muscle details done, because we want to start with big stuff with no modifiers if we can. All right, we got some chats here. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'd love to work on it some. Also, if you're interested for new characters to make, I found the game Rampage Total Destruction to be a good place for inspiration. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I'll check it out. And I'll get a hold of you about the audio stuff. I think that's awesome. We should definitely start talking and see what we want to do with it. But yeah, no, I'm excited. Thank you for reaching out on that. Audio is one thing that I've never touched at all. So I'd like to learn from you as well. Kong Lantern says, is 5070 performance similar to 4070 Super? As of when was that? Last week? The 5070 and 4070 Super basically performed the same. And honestly, the 4070 Super was slightly faster in some tests. I don't think the drivers are completely done, or they weren't when I ran it. And people have also told me that the 5070 runs faster on Blender 3.6 than on 4.3 by a lot, like 15%. I think another YouTuber had found that out. Someone in a comment told me that. So I think, to me, there's optics or driver problems that the 5070 just doesn't have the software there yet, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. So as of today, yes, they're basically the same, except the 5070 uses a little more power. So anyway, yeah, it's a hardware shopping is very weird right now, to say the least. All right. I think we're caught up on comments. So let's get back to our guy here. So now it's time to do things like the feet. And more so than ever, I'm going to use inflate, crease, smooth, and grab. And that's basically going to be it for most of the time until we have to slide some topology around. But there's not really a lot of rhyme or reason to this. You're gonna want to start with your most generic details first, because we have good topology and there's a fair bit of it, but it's not enough to get really high detail. So we're just going to start doing some of the generic stuff that we could do with sculpt base mesh turned on inside of multi-res. But let's just get the mesh fixed up first. Let's just do it this way. So I'll kind of make a small ridge at the bottom of hooves, and then I'll drag it down, because this should be somewhat of a flat line. And this can also be done with sliding the topology. And we'll leave the backs alone, because they should have a little bit of a taper to them. So I'm going to basically draw a sort of messy bottom rim around this. And it's not going to end up with much of one. I'll show you in a second. And it's more of a problem with other kinds of hooves, like horse hooves. But we don't want it to be too rounded off. So let's just grab the edges of this and just kind of pull it down. It'll give it a little bit more of a crisp edge line to it. And that's what we want to do right now, is we want to block in anything that's going to become a finalized detail. So we're just going to make sure that the general forms are done, and then basically I want to get to a point where I can say, okay, I feel happy with this mesh as it is, and then I'm going to go back and add all those little tiny details. And a lot of that will be texturing, some of it will be in sculpting. So, and really the two methods, texturing versus baking maps in Blender, it's basically the same thing. Tools like Substance Painter will help you do it all in one step, as basically just like a paintbrush. It does everything at once, and it just looks like it looks, makes the maps, and then you're done. We gotta smooth that out a little. Yeah, so Substance is probably the best add-on for finishing models, at least for me, and I'm not even that good at it. It's just really nice. But we'll do that on this video for sure. I don't want to just show all these paid add-ons and stuff, but I mean, really the point of this series is to just show the whole process, and just because I get too comfortable just sitting here building these, and there's really no reason I shouldn't just be streaming or recording while I'm doing it. So I'm just going to show you guys my process for this one, and then we'll just see for the, for future videos. If you guys are like, just do one completely in Blender with free stuff, then I'll do it. I'll bite my lip and I'll do it. But everything can be done in Blender. It's just a matter of how much time can you spend on it. So for me, I don't have enough time to use some of the tools that Blender has, which are fine, but they're slow. And part of that is just that I don't know them. It's not necessarily that they're bad. All right. So now here I'm just using this crease tool. So I'm going to cut a crease that defines a line. It's going to be really gentle. And then I'm going to inflate on the other side of that. Same idea I do for a ton of different kinds of details on sculpting. And then if it gets to be too thick, if I overdo it, I can smooth the entire thing, and it will keep the general shape and correct the amount of overboard that I go. So here we're just kind of giving it a little bit of more muscle definition. I think I'm going to bring the base of the neck out just a little more. We'll just kind of make it a little bump for now. We'll decide what to do with it in a minute. I don't think he should have quite as pronounced of a chest muscle as like a horse would, but we'll do a little bit. So again, here I'm going to crease. Let's go up a little stronger. Crease. Okay, and then that basically brought it in too far. So I'm going to bring side of the legs out just a bit like that. And then I'm going to inflate. And let me go to, yeah, see how close that topology is? It doesn't need to be that close. So we'll go back to sculpt mode, and I'll inflate this little chest muscle. Remember what I said, overdo it and then smooth tool. Okay, so we're gonna go overboard. I'm gonna move this extra little spot here forward, and we'll move this down a little bit. Okay, move this down, and then move this down. And so between smooth tool and this one here, which is scraper fill, which I'll actually use the fill tool for some of this. If you have a crease that you like, but it's too far in, you can fill it. And So you can use this tool to kind of flatten off planes or fill in gaps. I think we have to use smooth first though, because we have some mesh folding on itself. And when you use the smooth tool, it moves the mesh just a little bit, but it corrects these edge lines, kind of respaces them. So now there's just a little bit too much of a depth to it, so I'm gonna pull it back out again. Let's pull these together. We'll just kind of have that chest muscle fade into nothingness back here, so we'll smooth that out a little more. There we go. That'll just kind of disappear. It's not going to matter too much on this model, but every little detail you add can be that last 5 or 10% that you didn't know you needed. Okay, so we'll do that. And one thing I've learned about sculpting is that really sharp creases between things where there should be one make a huge difference, because then you don't have like a generic kind of transition where you can't tell where it goes from the leg to the body. So in certain places like this where I really want the model to look like this is the end of the leg where it touches the body, I'll come in here and just completely over exaggerate those creases. And then with just a little bit of smoothing that out, it just makes a nice division. And especially in places like the legs, let's go to edit mode and move our cursor. In here, it'll make a huge difference for deformation on the crease there, because you just don't want the squishiness. This will help prevent the mesh from stretching between the two spots. It'll kind of make a nice cutoff point for weight painting, and that'll just make everything move better. So we'll do that around the legs where they touch the body. We'll do it around the tail. We'll do it all over the place. One spot I don't add it is on the skin here for the leg. I kind of like to leave a little arch there of loose looking skin. I think it makes it look a little more realistic. Now let's see, make sure I haven't missed comments. Nope. Okay. So let's zoom in, and I'm just gonna bounce around. It's the only way I know. But I'm gonna start smoothing back out some of these details that I just made, and just a little bit. Not gonna destroy them. Just gonna bring them back down a little bit. Okay, so now this thing has just a little bit of a knee. I'll fix the bottom of the leg. I'm looking at one of these toys. I think we actually got the thickness of the legs done pretty well. But they are super skinny, so it never hurts to come in there and use your crease tools and just kind of add that extra definition. Try to trace the bones. You can really show a lot of form, where this could just be kind of a generic shape. If you make that crease, it really accents the bone in the leg, like that. So you can kind of start to see, makes it look a little bit more trim, kind of more what we'd expect for the deer. And then I think this should be kind of like a little ball. So we'll just make sure that this crease goes around like that. And then it'll have to separate itself. So you'll have this split here, like that. And then it'll kind of trail off into the back, like that. So like this, just keep in mind, technically, the two hooves would move separate from each other, and there's a bit of a gap between them. So having that really hard seam in there is one of those places where it makes sense. But we'll use this nice sharp crease there. So now this is something you could do with your multi-res modifier. The reason I'm not now is because I just don't have to. So in the case where your topology is not enough, and ideally this would be less topology, especially for games. Animation, it seems to be not too bad, but it does add to the render time. But for games, definitely need lower poly. You wouldn't want to be doing this just on this high of detail mesh. So if that's the case where you're like, I can't run this, I don't have enough topology to get those details, that's when you switch to multi-res modifier. And we will for just a couple of the things here in a minute. But now see, there's a fairly obnoxious division between the leg and the hoof. And if you look at them, that's not really how it looks. So we're just going to take the smooth tool, and we're just going to take little areas kind of in flat spots, and we're just going to take the sharpness out in specific spots. So if you do that, it's still going to hint that that line exists, but it's just going to kind of look a little bit cleaner. And actually, I think right here, I'm going to leave a little bit one. Yeah. And then I'm going to inflate this like that. So I got to be careful. I'm more used to horse legs. These are a little more fine-tuned than horse legs, although those are pretty hard to get right as well. But I'm just gonna inflate a little bit on the other side of the creases here. So now you don't want to bump there. You want this to be flat, but you want there to be sort of a wall there. So I can take these little bit of crease and just kind of slide that up to make this angle sharp on this side and not sharp on this side. I don't know if that makes sense. You can kind of see it. And then really, really gentle, smooth on the back side of this. And it should kind of even that out. Placeholder says, "We love you, King." Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for the 9070 XT review. I appreciate you so much. You're the GOAT for it. Well, hey, you know, that's half of what I do here. Although lately it's most of what I do is the tech stuff. And the way I see it, it's all related because you really can't do this stuff without knowing anything about your computer. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun being able to make those for you guys. So I appreciate that people are seeing them more and that they're helpful. So absolutely not a problem. All right. Got to be a little bit careful here not to make this guy look just completely ridiculous. He's still got deer features. He's not a bodybuilder and he's not wasting away or anything. So we want to be careful. If you cut those details in too much, it'll look like he just doesn't have any sort of muscle at all. Let's maybe hit one here, just a little one like that. And then we don't want such a hard line for the knee, so I'm going to bring it back. It really kind of has a diagonal shape to it. So I'm going to just move that. I'm going to do that, and then we're going to inflate behind the line again. Inflate behind the line. Let's go up a little more strength. It's going too slow. There we go. Then I'll taper that back in. We want him to have kind of a knobby little knee. I'm going to smooth this out because I notice my lines here aren't going to come into the same place. So I'm going to move that one. And we need to kind of fill this whole spot back in. So let's just do that. Let's have it just fade away at the top here. And then I'll come back and fix it later. So sometimes I'll throw in some of the sculpting that I know I want to have. And then like right now when I'm kind of struggling to figure out exactly which one to do next, I'll go find a reference in a while. And if I wasn't streaming, I would just get on a browser or whatever and go get that little gap of the muscles in my mind, just to go see what they should look like. But here I can see that his little knee area needed to be just a little thicker there. Pull this one out. So yeah, between this stage, anything we do with multi-res and the texturing, we're in the final phases of manipulating the mesh. I guess the other things we'll have to do is just add some teeth and stuff like that, but nothing crazy left for the mesh, so that's good. I think we're getting there. And what's really funny is here's what it looks like in shaded render preview. It still doesn't look like anything special, but I guarantee you if we slap a halfway decent, even just a skin color on this, or we put the feet in one color and the body in one color, I think this thing's just going to pop. So if you get to this point, or you get to a point where like you need some sculpting still, but you're not sure it's going to get there because, you know, whatever doesn't look right to you on the model, just keep going. Just keep going. One of my favorite quotes is, the weirder it looks in the viewport, the better it looks after you render it. I don't know why that would work, but it definitely seems to. So otherwise, just come back to it, you know? Keep your model, put it on the shelf, learn how to do that on another one, and then come back some other day. And I've done that a lot lately, so. And just be using it, you know? Just, if you want to get used to Blender, just do it as much as you can. And that's not always easy. I know that, but I don't think almost anybody is just able to do stuff like this somehow on their own. I don't think there's prodigies for this per se. Some people pick it up faster, whatever, but I don't think anybody got into Blender and made accurate topology and correct muscle details on their first attempt in an hour. So you just got to keep going. Every time I look at a character, you know, if I like the texture, that's fine, but I find something wrong with them and I don't want to post it, and I probably have a dozen characters that I haven't even put on YouTube because I've been just too afraid to start posting about them. So just do it. Just keep working. It's looking good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It's these little things. That's what I'm saying, is you got to get all the way through. And if it's just a practice run on a character, then go through it, but get to the end. You know, if you have to skip retopo and just get a texture on there, then do that. And then the next time do better. But until you add these little teeny tiny effects, these little muscle details, and then the texture, it just really won't look like you expect. So you gotta get to that point. And yeah, ideally, we've been talking about it a little bit. Ideally, someday, maybe we can do this on the Discord. I'm gonna send out like official launch links to it. I've been meaning to set up my Discord page. We can talk about group stuff. I think there's just so many people doing so much cool stuff alone, separately. We should really be able to get together and do some cool stuff. And I've seen it starting. I'm in a Discord group because they had some questions for me, I think. I don't remember how I got in there, but they have almost 300 people, and they all just use Blender and 3D software to recreate pinball games. And that's all they do. They have dozens of projects at any one time and hundreds of people working on them. And they have status reports and they have deadlines, and it's just mind blowing. So, what do you think about expensive online animation classes, such as Animation Mentor? That's a good question. I haven't used them myself. It's I don't know how good they would be because I haven't used them. But I'll also say I don't know I don't know how to animate properly yet. I still don't know how to use the NLA editor the right way or anything like that. So I think there's a lot of technical knowledge that you can get from courses like that or from going to school for this. So like this, I have literally zero actual training on Blender or any 3D anything. It's all just been stuff I've learned. So I think having some rigid schooling, if that's the way you learn, I think that can be super, super valuable. As far as is a class worth it, I don't know. Deadlines make me nervous. Well, yeah, it's not so much just to have deadlines, but it's just I think it's just to say that it's possible to get large groups of people together, and you can just accomplish so much more. Like, I guarantee that if a few dozen of us from just the random spots on the internet got together, we really wanted to make a video game, we could do it. People can do that. So I think the key is just to know how much you can commit to it. And if that's just a certain thing, then you just got to say that up front and that's it. But no, and I, specifically, if you and I do some work together on animations and the sound design stuff, I don't have deadlines for any of this. I don't make a single dollar off of modeling or any of that. So none of that's a concern, in my opinion, at this point in my, we'll call it Blender career. So specifically with us at this time, it doesn't matter. But yeah, and there's a weird line between hobbies and, trying to turn YouTube or Blender knowledge or something else into an extra income. There's just a fine line there between fun and when is it a job and do you want it to be a job. So if Blender's a hobby or sound design is a hobby or whatever you do, maybe you don't want to commit to things. Maybe that makes it no fun. So, and most people I know that work in Blender definitely do have a day job too. It's really hard to turn this around for money and just do this, But that's actually where the name for the channel came from. I sat for, I think, 2 full nights, maybe like 4 or 5 hours of free time, trying to decide on the name for this YouTube channel. And the name of it is kind of an engineering term, but it means when you improve one parameter of a design, you make something worse in a different one. And that's the tough part of it, is the balance between the hobby and the, you still have to make money, you still have to go to work, but you really want to do this more. And that's, so improving one thing makes the other thing suffer. Just a little fun fact on the history there. But all right, I need to get a reference out for the bird feet. I'll have to admit, I'm really not used to what bird feet look like up close. That one's a good one. We'll use that. Put that right behind it there. And then let's get the foot picks out. Let's see, we can turn that one off for now. That's just floating around up there. Let's just move this forward. No reason it can't be by his front leg like that, I guess. Then we'll move this one up. Sure. I think that's out of the way enough. So I think these two are the best ones anyway. Yeah, it looks like, so they kind of have like the pad of a toe on each part of the joint there. So we can try to do that. That might need more topology for that though. But we'll try to make sure the toes are the right shape now that we're trying to finalize. So what I notice is the front face of the toe is kind of perpendicular to the toe. So like mine are rounded off too much. So I might just flatten those out. So I think that's what I'll do first. And then I'll know that I have a nice flat surface to start with instead of trying to fit a toenail into a shape that is incorrect. So I'll just take the ends of them and kind of push them back in. And then the toenails, I will actually make a separate mesh for each toenail, which seems to work pretty well, except for then you have a ton of little tiny objects. But on the one character that I'm trying to make the shorts for right now, every single fingernail is a separate mesh, and it's easy to weight paint and it works nice for animation. So okay, let's stub those. The one on the back. Okay, so the one on the back actually kind of sticks up a lot more. I guess not on all of them. Okay. Let's zoom back in on the foot. Let's just blunt that one too. We'll do kind of like that. This will just be the pad of the toe. And then we'll just have the toenail kind of come out of top. Sort of like that in there. Okay. Round that off. Rotate, round that off. Just want that to be kind of a flat face, and then it'll poke out right from here. Honestly, I would consider doing these with the snake hook, but I don't think with materials and stuff that would be a lot of fun. So we'll just not do that. All right. So for the feet, we'll need multi-res if we're going to do this much texture on the toes, so we'll skip that. Man, bird feet are just kind of weird looking. I always forget they're that textured when you're that close to them. I think this, technically their toes would not really stick out like this. They won't have this much of a web. I'm just wondering with how much bigger this foot is and how it has to kind of carry this larger animal, we might just leave it a little bit beefier looking. I don't think it's too bad. And then the feet actually just are a really smooth transition into a cylinder, so that'll be easy. We'll just kind of make this more gentle. Go all the way around. Keep going this way, keep going this way. We don't want to make it too thick. And one idea that somebody brought up was putting a spur in the middle of the leg, and I think that's kind of cool. So we're gonna we're going to look at that. I think, is it in here? I have a reference somewhere. Maybe it's not on the page. Let's go back to object mode. I got to find that one, because I want to show the color scheme that I want to go for too, at least for this first version of it. Yeah, let's just put it in there. Let's add an image reference. Oh, I have no idea what these names are. Preview, please. No? Maybe? Yeah, there we go. So this is one I got off of Google Images also. Obviously, this was something somebody drew, so I'm not going to just like slap it on the UV map and steal the texture, but that's kind of the color pattern I want to try to use on this one, just because it's a little different. That color scheme is called piebald, and it's a relatively rare coloring that deer can get, and I think some other animals get so often. But really cool looking so far. The spur's a great idea. Awesome, thanks. Yeah, see, in this one too, I remembered this reference has kind of that spur halfway up the bottom of the leg. So, and this will be really fun too, because we could do the same kind of thing with different colors on the feet, and then the scales on the back legs. This one, all of the exposed skin, like the nose and underneath the legs and wherever the hair would be lighter, that's all kind of a pink color, which fits the piebald scheme. And then we'll have kind of a similar tail. So I think this is a cool reference to start with. But basically what I was saying earlier is I would want to start with a base model of this that has splotches that are just a solid black color, and then the rest of the body is, say, a solid white color. And then all I would have to do to make a different color combination is go in and fill paint the black to green and the white to, you know, a gray color. And just, you could make any color combination just by picking one color and clicking fill. So if I custom paint these by hand, I won't be able to come back and change the color that easily, because the shaders just won't affect it the way you expect. So I'm gonna try to think about that as we go. If it doesn't happen on this one, that's fine. But that's kind of a cool thought. Yeah, this drawing definitely has lankier legs, which is fine, because 2D and 3D don't always end up looking the same. You can't over exaggerate thin features on 3D models as easily, I don't think, because they just end up looking way too weak. Basically, they don't look like they have enough strength to them. So I'm going to move this guy down, put this guy kind of over here where we can see it, and then these ones will just go up here for a while. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, and then another beginner mistake to avoid: don't just skip references. They really help. There's no benefit to not having them. So you know, do your best to make something unique to what you want to do, but you're not copying anybody by looking at a drawing they did. All right. Unless you are like, you know, OpenAI or something, then you are just copying people, but that's a different topic. All right, let's do the leg spur. So it's pretty thin. It's just like one spike. It's basically going to be, it's probably not a toenail per se. So I'm going to put it right in the back of the leg, and I'm going to model this because we don't want to mess with our topology. We want it in the middle of the back, so it's going to be somewhere around here. You know, that might be close to what we want. Okay. So now we're going to have to think about this a little bit carefully. Let's turn our references off so we're not confusing them. We want to make sure that we get the same selection on both sides and that we can mirror it. So let's try to get these figured out. Let's see if I have loop tools turned on or not. Does not look like it. All right, we'll just try to draw it careful. That looks somewhat centered. Might be a little big. So I'm just going to take off a couple lines here. Maybe. So I'm not going to get too worried with trying to make like an oval shape for this as a base. We'll probably be able to correct that pretty easily with sculpting after this. And really, it's nice to have a good hard edge. Okay. So, great question. My eyes are peeled. I'm curious how you'll model a fine detail like that claw after already sculpting the whole Peryton. All right. So, yeah, no, that's a great question. So what we're going to do is we're going to model it. So if we even already had textures on this and you didn't want to destroy the texture or what else? If you don't want to make your retopoed model broken, you can still do a lot of modeling without actually causing a problem. So I'm gonna use those planes. I think they're okay. The other thing here is they give us enough detail. And keep in mind, we can get all of the small bumps and roughness from the texture. You don't have to get all of it modeled. Really, all this has to do it crudely is extrude. We'll cut some loops in there just for reference. Set them wherever. Let's take the faces. Oh, can we just get those end faces? Nope, of course not. Let's do that. I'll turn on proportional editing, and we'll scale this way in. So basically, and I'll come back and do this more properly. But basically, we're starting with enough detail that just to get the form of it done, it's really not going to be too much of a problem. So let's just say we wanted to do it all per edge loop like that. We just kind of tapers in, but I mean, yeah. So once you get this done as kind of a rectangle, and you can build these polygons out. That's what we're going to actually do when we do this. Once you get these as rectangles, we take this into sculpting mode, and we'll be able to make this nice and round. So, let's do it. Let's undo back until where we were, because that one's not too bad, but we're not going to extrude that way. We're going to do a little bit different, and we're going to make sure we do it on both sides. So let's make sure I don't have a duplicate of the faces. We don't. Nope, we're good. And I'm actually going to I'm going to go to select and then select mirror and extend, and it's going to say you can't do that because I don't know why. Let me see. All right, well, let's try that. Let's try to apply the transforms sometimes that causes problems in edit mode with the select mirror. Nope. Nope, it doesn't like it. That is not fun. All right. Which means that it doesn't see the mesh as the same on both sides. So this actually might be a good time to just do these asymmetrical anyway. Let's just do that. I'm going to, so what I was trying to do is select both sides and have it do the same thing in edit mode. It's just not a fan of that for some reason. So we're just gonna do these custom individually right now. Yeah, no, that'll work. So I'm gonna come in here in face mode. I'm gonna delete the faces because these don't have to be the same either. Did the claw get mirrored correctly? No, so the claw would not either. No, I could separate it, mirror it to the other side, and then I would probably have to move it slightly to get it to line up and reattach it. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking we could do it a different way, but I think this will work. So let's just try this. But you know, we can try to get them to be really close to each other. But this is one spot where it wouldn't matter if they are different anyway. So here, this time, I am actually going to extrude, and I want to make sure if I do that I'm aligned in a certain axis. Otherwise, we'll be going sideways. We really want to just go straight back. So let's just extrude, and we'll go by Y. And then we'll just take this and go to Z. And then let's see how long we need it. Not much longer than that. Rotate X. And then we'll scale it. That'll probably be fine. And then just kind of like we did before, we'll cut enough loops. Actually, let's maybe do quite a bit. Let's try to make this topology square like the leg, so that these faces aren't a lot different from the ones on the leg. And that way sculpting will just be a little easier, because really we could smooth this whole base out and make this more of a tube shape. And so that's what we'll probably do. So let's come in here, and we have to fill this. So now what we've done is we've kept our mesh manifold, meaning once we fill that hole at the end of this spur, we don't have any weird double faces. If we leave this whole spot in here on the inside of the leg filled in, we're going to cause problems with Blender not knowing which face is the top. I had a similar problem when I tried to model my creepy pony. It turned out that XYZ coordinates of each respective point were not perfectly symmetric. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it's that's why I wonder if it is my fault or if Blender does have a little bit of a bug. Because yeah, it seems sometimes like the it just gets shifted, and I don't know if that's during sculpting or, you know, moving between programs, or there's a lot of things that could cause it. But yeah, it's definitely annoying. All right, so I'm gonna grab this and I'm just gonna fill that. Yeah, we don't want to do it that way. I need to get my loop tools turned on. Man, yeah, I really don't want to make you guys sit there and watch while I make planes. Let me think how to do it. Where is Add-ons, loop tools. Oh. Yeah, I do. I think Blender has a bug with symmetry or something. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been able to figure it out, but all right. Oh, you know what? It's the F2 add-on. That's what we need. Yeah. This is how I used to model all of my characters. Literally connecting points. Just real slow. Da, 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 da. All right, let's just. Where is edges? Edge. Let's just get rid of these. Yeah, let's just not deal with that for now. I think that's not necessarily fun to watch. So let's just knife everything. Knife tool's not too bad. Yeah, I'm definitely not as much used to modeling anymore. I think the F2 add-on would have an automatic fill, and I just don't remember. I don't remember what the command is, but it would tell Blender just to match up all the faces and make this a grid. I just don't have that. I just don't have that hotkey in my head. But knife tool will just come here and it'll cut every single one of these lines in here anyway, and then we'll keep our nice topology because we're not shrinking these down into a point. We're not destroying topo by doing this. Okay, so now there you go. We've got kind of this spike, and we'll go at long last back into sculpt mode. The other possible thing we could do, which is a little risky, is we could try to symmetrize the whole mesh. Let's see. Who is in here? We still got connection. Looks like we should. Looks like everybody left, according to YouTube. No, maybe not. All right. Now let's just try to mirror by X global. Yeah, see, there is a little bit of goofiness. Let's see what that did. Mesh mirror. Yeah, that's exactly what it did. So when I mirror it about X, it slightly shifts. Okay. Which means that it's not actually at 0. So let's set the origin to geometry again. And it does claim it's just barely off of 0, so let's set that back to 0. And now let's go to edit mode. And let's just do it by halves. Go here. if you come in here and you grab exactly half of the mesh, or even really you don't need half of it, you just need the points that you want to deal with. But if you get everything off of the center line, let's just try it. You should be able to just mirror. All right. Yeah, it just doesn't look like it's moved. Yeah, if you go into edit mode, and if X mirroring is working, you should be able to grab a point on one side and move it on the other. And we are definitely not having that right now. All right. That's okay. That won't really cause us any problems. So we'll just base this one on the same general area. Let's do it like this, and we'll go X-ray mode, and we'll just turn a little bit. We'll just kind of say that's the middle of it. Yeah, and that's a weird thing. I'm sure it's something people are aware of, or I can't remember if I've had to fix that issue on my own projects or not, but definitely kind of annoying with 6. So, but like we talked about with symmetry before, it doesn't really matter. This late in the game, we're not going to be doing anything that requires mirroring, including UV work. Won't matter because we're going to just basically be custom painting in a way anyway. Can you delete half and mirror it over like you did with the head? That's usually what I do when I run into issues. Yes. I probably can. I just don't want to create that. I don't want to break the center loop. But you know what? Now that you say that, maybe let's look into it, because yeah, this ZBrush, for whatever reason, thought this one exact spot was the best place to put the end of this center line, and this is one that I would prefer to be able to use for UV mapping. So maybe we fix that at the same exact time. But yeah, let's try that. Let's go back into edit mode, and let's just do it. Might as well. And we'll select everything on this side because we want to keep the side with the spur. All right, that went just a bit too far. So maybe we'll go with edge loops instead. See if that picked them up. Looks like we might be missing one loop. Yeah, and the other problem with this is you could just select it by edge loops, but sometimes the topology won't follow all the way. So I'll try to switch to faces, and we'll go here. And then let's just try. Nope. We don't want to do that. Yeah, see, it's got a break in the topology somewhere. So it does kind of make that goofy. So we'll undo that one. And then I'll just we'll just do it the fun way, which is no way. And we'll just manually trace that all the way back over here. Yeah, and it's just like that. The Zremesher is great, but it doesn't do everything. So there's a little bit of funkiness. At this point, it's not going to hurt us too much because it really won't affect our rig or our textures not to be perfectly all quads or anything like that. So we should be able to just come all the way. Nope, it didn't like that. All the way up here, all the way back here. Boom. Okay, there. Had to get through the mouth. And I just can't see. Can't see specifically enough to actually select everything from just the back of it. All right, now should be able to come all the way back here. Select, select, select over and over. Solid line. And then, yeah, see, that's where it causes the problem. We'll do that. And then this should fill this line all the way up to here. And then we can easily delete those. And then we're going to come up here. And this guy, for whatever reason, is the only one on the entire mesh that it thought it needed to do that with. So let's just get rid of that half. And now it should mirror perfectly without all the hoopla. Get rid of these extra horns over here. Oh, really? Turn on X-ray again. There we go. All right. Now it's good. All right. All right. So I'm going to zoom in real close. Yeah, you can see that. This thing is shifted still, just a little bit. So we need to move it just barely over. And because I don't want to mess up our loops. I want to spend the time here to really not mess it up. Yeah, and like that. So it would be a lot easier to just kind of cut and mirror if you were earlier in the sculpting process. I just don't want to risk that we have another topology break like that. So it's just really annoying, but hopefully this will give us the chance to also fix the symmetry issue. So what I might do before we get any further, and maybe this is where the issue came from, I'm going to apply this transforms now. So now anything we mirror is actually going to be based on the origin. So I think that'll fix it for us. So let's go to mirror. And then there's this gap that we're going to have to deal with. And also, what exactly is that? Is that on the back of it? Is that just another visual issue? Huh. Yeah, no. Must have just been like a illusion, I guess. All right. So with mirror on, yeah, we can just join them together, but is it going to be a clean mesh? We don't want duplicate vertices, although we can fix those. Just want to make sure. And see, this one did fix this center line. So hopefully we'll be able to just mark that entire center line as a seam for UVs. I also want to make sure that it didn't make his head absolutely massive from making it wider, but it doesn't look like it did too much. What else could it break? Not much. I think that's actually fine. So we'll go ahead and apply that. And then I'll check in edit mode if these are duplicated or not. Looks like they're not. Oops, missed. And it still didn't want to get all the way through there. Oh well, that's fine. It'll be fine. But now we have mirroring, and I hope, let's select some planes. Look at that, we did it. And it only took half an hour of pain. But yeah, so that, I think that's what happened. So write that down, I guess. If your mesh has a symmetry problem, it's probably because the mirror modifier was done on an object that did not have its transforms applied. So it kind of builds in a slight shift to the mesh. I think that's the best theory I have. So it was definitely user error at some point, which it almost always is anyway. But all right, well, let's sculpt these. Let's sculpt these little spurs here quick. And again, don't touch Dino-Topo. Just don't do it. It's too late for that. Yeah, and that's kind of the point too of doing the multi-res modifier the way that you'll see people doing it. You don't want to you don't want to have to be using dynamic topology just to get your sculpting to work. If you have that many points and they're that messy, then you're probably just going to have more problems if you're already not planning on retopo or anything. So I think the best way to do it is to use multi-res and get super high topology that's already nice quads and good edge flow and all that. And then you don't have to get detail from just adding it where Dino-Topo thinks you need it. You know what I mean? All right. Now this part, at long last, we're shaping these. And keep in mind how relatively few planes these had. There really wasn't much to them, but we're still able to get a decent look out of it. So let's inflate it to kind of make it rounded more. And then we'll inflate the edges and smooth the corners, and then pretty soon it'll look nice and rounded off at the sides. That, and then I need to find, where's a good reference of one? Back on this guy, I think. Yeah, it's just like a thin spike. We'll do it like that one. That's kind of cool. Whoever suggested that the other night and encouraged it today, that was a cool idea. I think that adds something to it a little bit. Just kind of keep messing with it. Okay, and then I don't actually know if this thing has a nail on it or not. Does anybody know if the spur has a separate nail? I don't think so. I think it's just a piece of bone. All right. All right, that is pretty cool. Let's just get the bottom thickened out a little so it's not weird looking. I think that's pretty good until we get some textures and stuff, so maybe make that not look like a rectangle. But yeah, even the end of it came out nice, and you know, it's not crazy topology. It still looks pretty clean. When we come texture this, we'll basically stop his bird leg texture somewhere in here, and just we can make a separate one for the spur or not. I was thinking it'd be similar to a tusk. Yeah, I think it's like a bone. I think it's just a chunk of bone that sticks out. I don't know. It's just like a nail coming out of the leg. Oh, okay. So it's just like a whole separate I keep trying to call them fingernails, but maybe we'll just stick with that. So it's just a separate bird fingernail. I don't know if those are big enough or not. I think they're good. Yeah, no, they're good. Let's clear the mask. Let's save it one more time. Where else do we need some details? We'll have to add teeth. I'll have to keep cleaning up his shoulders and legs and stuff. I don't know. I'm gonna have to try to find maybe dragons or something. Good pictures of how they handle the shoulder. I'll be able to hide it a little with feathers, but I feel like if you start with the completely wrong shape, that's going to be hard to deal with. So I think that'll be the next thing. Let's see, what time is it? I'll probably stop the stream in, like, I don't know, 15 more minutes. So just so everyone knows, it is 12:15 a.m. here. I appreciate everybody hanging out with me for this long at a time. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. I wish I could do all of the content as live streams, because it's just so much more personable than recording a video, you know. But try to do as many as I can, I think, going forward. So yeah, those are just some nice lumpy looking wings there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to smooth those out because they're bothering me now. Yeah, have a good night. Thanks for coming by. Yeah, I'll just keep moving stuff around for, you know, a little bit, and that'll be that. Next time we'll do eyeballs, teeth, figure out what we're doing for the gums and mouth and stuff, and then UV unwrap should take about 10 minutes, and then textures. I think we're close. Because this kind of model, I'm just going to end up throwing fur on the whole body. So I really don't need to get too much detail on little tiny muscle details, and where else? Lips and stuff may not even be visible because of the hair, so we'll see how much more sculpting we even need, but I think it's looking pretty cool. So, yeah. I'm going to start hiding some of these. And I'll save the actual UV unwrapping for the next video. Have a great night. I didn't realize it got so late. I hopefully have a job interview tomorrow. Uh-oh. Yeah. Good luck with that. Don't hopefully you're not too tired for that. Just sticking around the live stream. So, good luck. I'm sure it's not too bad. Are you must be in the US then. But either way, it's pretty late. Yeah, we're waiting on a snowstorm here. And I don't know, they're saying up to 10 inches of snow with 60-mile-per-hour wind, so not sure if I'll be able to leave tomorrow anyway. I might just be doing this during the day as well, but good luck to you. All right, what do we got? Last few minutes, I'm going to throw on, just for the sake of seeing what this thing might look like. I'm just going to throw on materials by selecting planes, and then we'll do it the right way on the next stream. So we won't keep these. It'll be just so we can start to see the colors. And we could set it up to just do paint instead, but I think we'll wait. because really, if we're going to do that, we might paint this kind of like spots and stuff like that. We'll paint them a little more carefully. This is just going to be to see what we think. And then I like to actually have the hair take its color from the skin paint underneath. That tends to be kind of a nice, easy way to control the color of the hair instead of manually adding different hair groups. So we'll get to that one probably next time too, but yeah, for now, let's just start throwing colors on. So I'm just going to basically select everything and then start cutting pieces off. So let's just take random bits of the top of the head. The wings, I suppose, can stay. The tail can stay. And then we'll take off the bottom of the legs. And then we'll just do random patches. Just however, it's going to end up looking like a cow if I do too much of this, but that's okay. It's just to see, right? And then down here, somewhere on the top of that, that'll all be bird foot material. Just maybe add some more random stuff. Put some incorrectly mirrored ones all over. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So we're going to take those and we're going to assign those to the white color. And then I'm just going to cheat and we're going to... Where is my invert selection? We're going to take those. And I'm going to remove the feet in the back. And the horns. Let's do that. So when I start to get a model done, I like to just throw some colors on. I'm always tempted to get the rig going. And I've learned painfully over time that it just might not be worth getting too far ahead of yourself. But I think this will be cool. And I don't know, maybe not. We'll use it for the thumbnail instead of the AI one that YouTube gave me. Let's call these brown spots. And we'll assign those. Let's try to select by material. It'll work on the horns. We'll do those. Call those horns and assign them. And then we're just going to select all of the we never did the feet separately, so we can do that in its own. All right, there you go. We'll do that. Add a material. Rear feet. And we'll assign those. So let's give that a strange yellow color. Let's make it metallic for fun. Why not? And let's see, we can get back out of edit mode now. Let's just go to matte cap. That looks a little goofy. And let's make our scene light a sun. Like that too. That gives us just a little bit better view. Oh, we still got 6 people here. I'll keep going for a little bit if you guys are hanging out. Horns, I'm just gonna make them kind of a brown. I want them to stick out a little. Actually, nah, let's do a yellow. Let's just do it. Do it kind of like ivory color and ebony color, whatever. High roughness. And no metallic. High IOR. Good enough for now. Brown spots. Maybe we'll just make those brown. High IOR. Roughness. Yeah, better turn it up. And the body. Give it a little metallic, I guess, just so it's got some reflections. Yeah, and obviously it's not going to look like hair, but it gives you a good idea of a little bit more what it looks like. Monitor wants me to refresh the panel. It's telling me to go to bed. All right, cool. So there's just a 5-minute super janky color scheme. I do kind of like how this one has an extra color thrown in, just a kind of a paint color on the wings there. So maybe we'll find something fun to do like that. But yeah, what I'm thinking with building these is I could just come in here and set these colors to be whatever we want. And you could do this with more advanced textures. They wouldn't have to just be planes in one color either. So I kind of want to set up a way to just create this, save that as a certain named file, and then pack the texture, you know, and then I could have different versions of the same thing. Okay. There's our goofy little deer. Pretty cool, actually, honestly. Looking forward to seeing what we get out of it. I think that's going to be it for now. OBS Studio is telling me it's trying to kick me. My monitor wants to run a panel refresh. I think it's just time. So I appreciate everybody that was here tonight. It was a long stream again. Had some awesome discussions, and it's just a lot of fun. So Musik Monkey says, thanks, stay safe, nice colors, look forward to the next stream. Yeah, yep, and I'll talk to you soon on that email. So thank you guys, and that is it for today.